We will convene the March 20th meeting of MCE's Board of Directors. The time is 6:33 Pacific Standard Time. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Belvedere. Present. Benicia.
Here.
Concord.
I'm here.
Contra Costa County. Corte Madera. Danville.
Here.
El Cerrito.
Here.
Fairfax. Here. Fairfield.
Here.
Hercules.
Here.
Lafayette. Larkspur. County of Marin.
Here.
Martinez. Mill Valley.
Here.
Thank you. Moraga.
Here.
Napa.
Here.
The County of Napa and 4 Napa cities.
Here.
Novato.
Here.
Oakley.
Here.
Pinole.
Here.
Pittsburgh.
Present.
Pleasant Hill. Richmond. Ross.
Here.
San Anselmo.
Here.
San Pablo.
Here.
San Rafael.
Here.
San Ramon. Sausalito. Solano.
Yes.
Thank you. Tiburon. Vallejo.
Here.
Walnut Creek.
Here.
Quorum established.
Okay, great. Next, we'll go to board announcements. Are there any board announcements? We'll start at the Marin office.
I see no raised hands, Chair.
Okay. Any announcements in Napa,
No.
Solano County?
No, we're just still playing with the machine.
Okay. How about here at the Concord office? Okay. No, okay. Public open time. The next item is public open time. This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on anything that is not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public here in Concord who would like to speak? Anyone in the other offices? Will go to San Rafael.
No members of the public here at San Rafael, Chair.
Okay. Napa,
No members of the public here.
Solano?
None.
Okay, thank you. Now we will have a report from Chief Executive Officer Dawn Weiss. Go ahead, Dawn.
Thank you so much, Chair Quinto. MCE submitted its annual supplier diversity report to the California Public Utilities Commission on March 1st. And each of you should have a copy in front of you. I just wanted to highlight that last year, we can go to the next slide for some of the stats on this. Last year, MCE invested nearly $52 million in small local women, LGBTQ, minority, and disabled veteran-owned businesses. And while this report is a regulatory requirement, we actually use it to showcase stories about the local businesses we work with and how the clean energy transition is supporting an equitable and vibrant economy. So I encourage you to browse the report. It's available online. And we also have extra copies here and in the Concord office. Next slide, please. We are working to identify needs and implement solutions for clean transportation in historically underserved communities. To identify the needs, we've been working with local organizations to conduct focus groups. The effort is funded by a grant from the Department of Energy. And this grant was actually paused due to recent executive orders, but we just received the good news this week that funding has been restored. The focus groups have been hosted in 9 communities, 11 focus groups total, and the communities include San Pablo, Richmond, unincorporated Contra Costa, San Rafael, Pittsburgh, Concord, Vallejo, Napa, and Fairfield. 3 of the focus groups were held in Spanish, and over 130 members of the public participated. They all received gift cards for their time and participation, and we'll be sharing a report with the results pretty soon. Next slide. On to EVs and smart chargers. So MCE has helped more than 1,200 income qualified customers purchase an electric vehicle and save nearly $2.3 million on the purchase of a new vehicle through our instant rebate program. But to add on to it, we now have an income qualified smart charger rebate program, which is explained here. We are offering 100 rebates for customers who want to participate in the MCE Sync program. This is a managed charging program that helps folks shift their charging away from the expensive 4 to 9 period. The rebates are for $600 each, and that covers the cost of installing a charger that is able to work with MCE Sync. We began marketing the program in February. We already have 60 folks signed up, so they're going fast, and we're really excited about the success on that program. Next slide. So as the legislature and the governor's office are considering ways to lower electric bills, some stakeholders have circled back to energy efficiency as a possible area to make cuts. This idea is being championed in part by the CPUC's Public Advocates Office. And we're going to hear more about this from Stephanie Chen, our legislative director, later this evening. But I just want to underline the importance of supporting energy efficiency. The reason why, just to underline it even further, is, we really support energy efficiency programs because it lowers customer bills by reducing energy usage. It reduces demand during that 4 to 9 peak period when power is most expensive and least clean. It also reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And creates a lot of jobs. There's nearly 300,000 California jobs due to energy efficiency programs. So we encourage you all to listen in to what Stephanie's going to recommend tonight as a way to sign on and support energy efficiency. Next slide. I am so pleased to share that Tyler Brown, MCE's Senior Partnership Development Manager, was recently chosen as one of the North Bay Business Journal's 40 Under 40 award winners. And for those of you that don't know, Tyla collaborates closely with many of the community-based organizations across our service area to advance equitable, community-centered climate solutions. Her work centers on local workforce development, youth engagement, climate education, and community health resiliency. Her path to MCE is very inspiring, and I was fortunate to hear her journey in a presentation she gave to a group of local youth recently at the Napa Climate Summit last week. She really represents the passion, skill, and dedication to service that embodies the MCE staff and demonstrates why we are at the forefront of the clean energy movement in California. So big thanks, Tyla, for all that you do. Next slide, a quick plug for TechCom. We need some TechCom members. We're down to, I think, 5, and it is a great committee. It's really the heart of everything MCE does on power supply, greenhouse gas emissions accounting, and new innovative technologies. As an example, next month, a $1.3 billion prepay transaction is going to go to TechCom prior to board consideration. So if you're interested, think about joining. You can let me know, Jessica know, any of our staff. We actually have an item to add members to committees tonight on consent. If you want to volunteer, it's not too late. We'll also be having an item on the consent calendar for our April board meeting, so you could also join then too. Lastly, let's go to the next slide. We've been talking a lot about the MCE budget over the last 2 months, and that is the main item that will be coming before you tonight. Staff began in 2024 assessing and determining the resources that would be needed to maintain many functions at MCE while creating efficiencies in other functions. So that's part of the board that will be part of the budget we'll be presenting to you all tonight. Key drivers were presented and discussed at the February board meeting, and were also presented, discussed, and ultimately recommended in our February and March executive committee and technical committee meetings. The full slide deck that we'll be presenting tonight was provided to you and posted publicly last Thursday to allow plenty of time for review. And we've been in touch with most of you to answer any questions you may have. So we just ask as a courtesy to your colleagues on the board to follow the best practices for meeting participation. I really want to thank those of you who've engaged over the last week with your questions for staff. That should significantly streamline our discussions tonight. And just as a reminder, during the meeting, keep questions or comments concise and on topic. Allow space for your board colleagues to comment and ask questions. And for detailed discussions, you can always follow up with staff afterwards. And that's it for my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Dawn? We'll start here at the Concord office. Okay, how about the Marin office?
Yes, we have Director Wilkinson.
Okay, go ahead, Director Wilkinson.
Thank you. Dawn, I saw this week that PG&E was giving a bill credit in April, I think, one of its 2 a year. And a question I had was, because I understand it's $58 on electricity and $67 on gas. So if a customer is with MCE, do they get that credit?
Yes, they do. And I'm so glad you asked about that, Director Wilkinson. That is called the climate credit. It is required by the state that it be issued on energy bills. It shows up twice a year, and it's actually something that's under discussion at the legislature to reutilize in a way where it might be more impactful for customers by shifting it possibly to the summertime when people tend to have higher bills, or the wintertime when people also have higher bills. Or possibly adjust the fee so that it's really focused more on income qualified customers. Right now, it goes to everyone based on load twice a year, spring and fall. So we'll keep you posted on if there's going to be a change to that. But please tell your constituents it's not money that PG&E is giving out. It's money that the state is requiring go out to all customers, no matter who your provider is.
Hey, any questions at the Napa or Solano office?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go to the,
Chair
Oh,
Quinto,
forgive me.
we do have one more question here in San Rafael.
okay, go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to see if you could repeat the number of electric vehicles that MCE has sponsored.
1,200 income qualified. Yeah, thanks.
Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
I see no raised hands here in San Rafael or online.
Okay, very good. Next, we'll go to the consent calendar, and that is C1, approval of the February 20th, 2025 meeting minutes. C2, approved contracts for energy update. And C3, addition of board members to committees. Would any member of the board like to remove any items from consent? Doesn't look like that. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Belvedere,
Yes.
Phoenicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes.
Danville,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Hercules,
Aye.
Larkspur, County of Marin, Mill Valley,
Yes.
Moraga,
Abstain?
Napa,
Yes.
the County of Napa,
Yes.
Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
Pinole,
Yes.
Pittsburgh,
Aye.
Richmond,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
San Anselmo,
Yep.
San Pablo,
Yes.
San Rafael,
Yes.
Solano,
Yes.
Tiburon,
Yes.
Vallejo,
Yes.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Are there any board members that were not called?
Yes, this is Gina Dawson, Lafayette, arrived late. Yes.
Thank you.
Same
Motion
here.
carries. Go ahead.
Sridhar Burrows came late. Sorry for that. And yes, for meeting minutes.
Can you repeat your name, please?
Sridhar Burrows, San Ramon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Next, we will go to the legislative update with Stephanie Chen, Director of Legislative Affairs, will be introducing this item. Please go ahead, Stephanie.
Chair, I think we've got one item
Oh, which
before that.
Oh, the main
The
one.
major one.
Here,
Yeah.
okay.
Easy to gloss over.
Okay. I was going to skip that, but okay.
We'll come back to it later.
Yeah, no, we will go to number 6, which is a proposed fiscal year 2025-26 budget. A, proposed adjustment to MCE demand charges effective April 1st, 2025, and B, MCE investment in transmission software solutions. This item will be introduced by Myra Strauss, Vice President of Finance. There will be designated opportunities for the board to ask questions, and we kindly ask you hold any questions until prompted by staff and keep any questions succinct to leave room for your colleagues to weigh in. Myra, please take it from here.
Thank you, Director Quinto. Good evening, board members. Myra Strauss, Vice President of Finance. We'll be presenting tonight the proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget. We have a lot of slides to go through, so we divided in 3 sections, and we will stop 3 times for questions. Please feel free to refer to your attachments provided on your packet. I suggest you have attachment A handy, as we will refer to that many times during our presentation. Besides myself, you will hear from Efren Okshala on my left here in San Rafael. He's MCE's finance manager. Also, Greg Tillman, Associate Director of Rates, who is joining us remotely. And from the Concord office, Shaheen Khan, VP of DEI and Human Resources, and also Viken Kazarjan, MCE CEO. Moving on to some key highlights from the proposed budget. Our budget allows us to continue providing our customers with 60 to 100% renewable energy, stable and competitive rates. MCE hasn't increased our rates since January 2023, and continue energy affordability and accessibility programs. We are projecting approximately 25 million addition to our next year's operating fund after a transfer of 13 million from the operating reserve fund and a proposed adjustment to demand charges. With all of that, MCE continues to meet its reserve goals. Next slide, please. On March 3rd, the MCE Executive Committee voted to recommend board approval of the proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget, including the operating reserve fund transfer and the MCE Cares credit allocation and the proposed adjustment to MCE demand charges. On March 7th, MCE's Technical Committee voted to recommend approval of the proposed adjustment to MCE demand charges and the transfer from MCE reserves for the 10 million for transmission software upgrade. Next slide, please. Our operating reserve fund was created in 2019. There's a reference to the board approved policy, the policy 16. And this policy was created to strengthen MCE's financial position as a tool to address variability of our annual cash flow and expenses, ensuring that our agency can continue fulfilling its mission. In a sense, we defer revenue from a year with stronger results to use on years of not so strong results. The fund has currently $70 million, and we are close to maxing it out. Next slide, please. Talking about MCE reserve goals. So our reserve goals are part of the board-approved reserve policy, which was last amended in June 2024. We use our approved budget numbers and the audited financials when completing this calculation. The two first set of bars that have the green and the purple, they have audited financial numbers on it. So the first one we had at 77% of our goal. And then 23-24, we actually hit at 108% of our goal. So those are year close audited financials and a done deal. Then the next set of bars with the blue and green, those are with our board approved budget numbers. And we would close the year 24-25 at 106% of our goal. But this is with our approved budget, not like the other ones with the audited financials. So it's projections. Then the next one for 2025-26, the last set of bars, we have it at 101% of the goal with our proposed budget. Next slide, please. MCE Cares Credit. Staff recommends a continued $5 million allocation for the cost relief program, which promotes energy affordability and accessibility. And our eligible customers, low-income homes from CARE and FARA programs, and small and medium-sized businesses. This is our third year of proposed program, and it has been successful and used its board-approved extend. Next slide, please. So now we are going to deep dive into our proposed operating fund budget, and that's the attachment A that I mentioned in the beginning that we'll be referring to it. Next 2 slides, please. One more. Great. So this slide is, in a sense, is a visual representation of the top of your attachment A. In green, we have the increases, our operating revenues, increased demand charges, and the $13 million transfer from the reserve fund. And in red, we have the decreases, the uncollectible and the cost relief program and the bidirectional vehicle charging tariff. And lastly, in yellow is the net energy revenue. Next slide, please. So with that visual, now we have all the lines in the top of our attachment A. The operating revenue captures sales of electricity to customers. The increase is due to the adding the city of Hercules to our service area. The revenue is adjusted upwards by increasing revenue from higher demand charges and also a transfer from the operating reserve, and revenue adjusted downwards by assumed uncollectibles and the bidirectional vehicle charge. Next slide, please. Another visual representation of our energy cost. The first bar is the current year cost of energy, the budget, and the second bar is the forecasted cost of energy. This slide might be very familiar to most of you, as we have presented a couple times on XCOM. So the colored bars on the top represents the addition of the city of Hercules, the power source disclosure change, and the increased cost of renewables. Next slide, please. Now diving into energy cost breakdown. So starting at about 7 o'clock, moving clockwise, we have our resource adequacy contracts with a large piece of the pie, the dark green. The net, followed by the net Kaiser costs and the contingency. Other costs can be our NEM credit. And the largest piece, our energy contract. So dissecting the largest piece, the lighter green energy contract, we have, in a sense, half of it being our hedge contract, a small portion of large hydro, and a smaller one of ACS, which in a sense is hydro and other sources. And lastly, in blue, the renewable carbon-free energy purchases. Next slide, please. So here again, we go back to attachment A and putting those visuals into the attachment A to see how the cost of energy is captured and how it change from year over year. The first column as the approved budget for 24-25, followed by the projected budget 24-25, and now the proposed budget in the middle in dark blue. So we see the increase in the cost of energy by 11%. Next slide, please. Now we are going to move on to the first part of our proposed operating expenses. And to talk about the first item, I'm going to call Shaheen Khan to talk about our personnel expenses.
Thank you, Maida. Good evening, board members. I'm Shaheen Khan. I'm the VP of Human Resources, Diversity and Inclusion at MCE, and I'm here today to present an updated staffing cost proposal for fiscal year 25-26. Before we get started, following the feedback received at the February 20th board meeting, MCE has carefully reassessed our staffing cost proposal. The updated proposal reflects the input and feedback that we received, and it aligns with our long-term goals while ensuring we continue to deliver on our mission and vision. Staffing is the backbone to MCE's success. Our ability to execute our innovative programs and our ability to deliver top-tier service to our communities and our customers depends on our talent and depends on the well-being of our team. So ensuring we have the resources to attract, retain, and support our staff is critical to our ongoing success. So diving into what we see on the slide here, you'll be able to see a comparison between our initial proposal, which is in blue, compared to the updated proposal, which is in pink. The total proposed staffing cost for fiscal year 25-26 is $29.6 million, an increase of $2.5 million or 9.6% from the fiscal year 24-25's approved budget. Please note the $29.6 million is prior to any grant offsets. $25.4 million will be shown in the overall proposed budget, which is inclusive of grant offsets. The proposed salary budget is $18.8 million, reflecting an increase of $2.1 million or 12.7%. This is a key investment in ensuring our team is compensated both competitively and fairly, and also is essential to retaining our high-performing team, along with the addition of 13 proposed new hires. The proposed benefit budget is $10.7 million, an increase of $350,000 or 3.4%, driven primarily by rising carrier costs. Our commitment to benefits is cornerstone to our retention strategy. Our robust benefits package not only attracts top talent, but also supports the well-being of our team, empowering them to thrive both personally and professionally. So next slide, please. So as we dive deeper into the salary breakdown, you'll be able to see on this slide the proposed salary budget for fiscal year 25-26. The comparison is in blue, which was previously presented, and in pink is our updated proposal based on recent feedback and further analysis. The salary line item is divided, as you can see, into several key categories. You'll be able to see on this slide here the revised percent change from approved fiscal year 24-25's budget in each category, which is 1% for existing staff salaries, 37% for new salaries. We're proposing 13 new positions compared to 16 that was presented previously. Negative 34% for merit increases, 12% for promotions, and 11% for cost of living adjustment COLA. Please note the 11% increase refers to the year-over-year growth in applying the total cost of a 4% COLA to salaries. Next slide, please. Now diving a little deeper into the benefits breakdown, again, you'll be able to see a comparison to what was previously presented in blue and what is currently proposed in pink. The benefits line item is also divided up into several key categories. Looking closer, you'll be able to see the revised percent change from approved fiscal year 24-25's budget in each category, which is 18% for medical, dental, and vision, 8% for employer tax, 4% for ancillary benefits, 15% for retirement and our 457F, and negative 37% for other workers' compensation, vacation cash outs, etc. Next slide, please. This slide was presented previously and now has been updated to reflect our updated staffing cost proposal. In green, you'll see the current number of staff per department, and in pink, you'll see what department the proposed new hires are for. Next slide, please. Now I want to take a few moments to share with you the strategy and value add of the impact for the proposed new hires. The Venn diagram shows the value add in 3 key areas. The first being funding through external grant sources. MCE is positioned to receive significant external funding to support our initiatives and offset costs in the upcoming fiscal year. For example, 81% of 3 proposed positions will be externally funded, and a quick breakdown of the key sources are on the slide above. CPUC Energy Efficiency EE Portfolio and CPUC Green Access. We've secured preliminary approval for funding for CPUC EE funding through 2031, with a potential for an extension through 2035, pending next year's filing for the CPUC EE funding. And for CPUC Green Access funding, that runs through 2029. Continuous funding since 2012. So CPUC funding has consistently supported MCE since 2012, which demonstrates funding source reliability and supports our programs year after year. And California Energy Commission grants. We're also leveraging grants for MCE's Virtual Power Plant, VPP, with approval extending through 2029. Second, offsetting costs through internal capacity. By reducing reliance on external vendors, we not only improve the quality and control of our services, but also enhance our long-term strategic position. Here's how. First, improved quality and customer support. So transitioning from contractors to in-house teams strengthens our ability to provide better customer service, ensuring we can meet our customers' needs more effectively and efficiently. Cost reduction and institutional knowledge. Bringing more functions internally allows us the ability to not only reduce outsourcing costs, but also fosters our institutional knowledge at our agency, which benefits MCE's long-term success. It empowers us to maintain greater control over our service delivery. And third, enhancing internal efficiencies. As a part of our commitment to ongoing improvement, we're focused on building systems, tools, and processes that drive operational efficiency and responsiveness. These enhancements will help MCE stay agile and ahead of industry trends. The key initiatives include system development for operational efficiency. We're investing in developing and maintaining systems that streamline our operations, making MCE more adaptable to changing needs, enabling quicker responses to emerging opportunities and challenges. Adaptability to regulatory and industry changes. The tools and processes we are enhancing allow us to better navigate regulatory shifts and industry pressures that we often face, ensuring we stay aligned with best practices while we minimize disruptions. And third, customer-centric tools. Finally, our efforts focus on centering systems and tools that not only streamline our internal processes, but also improve how we serve our customers. These enhancements will help us offer faster, quicker, and more tailored solutions, which drive greater customer satisfaction and loyalty. Next slide. Now I'm going to pass it to Efren, who's going to go over operating expenses personnel.
Thank you, Shaheen. Good evening, board. My name is Efren. I am the finance manager at MCE. And I'll be going over the remaining parts of the operating expenses section, starting off with personnel. Shaheen already provided a lot of details on this, so I won't go into too much more detail. This line item is projected to go up to $25.4 million. And again, that is after grant offsets. That reflects an 11.3% increase against the current year's approved budget. Next slide, please. Next, we have MCE's data manager, and the data manager for us is Sacramento Municipal Utility District, otherwise known as SMUD. This entity provides analytics and also provides a lot of support with managing our customer billing. The costs are based on a fixed fee per customer service agreement, and because of the addition of the City of Hercules to our service area, the number of customer service agreements is also increasing. As a result, the proposed budget here is $5.2 million, which reflects a 2.7% increase against this year's approved budget. Next slide, please. Next, we have technical and scheduling consultants. These are very technical consultants that do a number of things for the agency. That includes scheduling our various resources into the California ISO. They also help us predict customer demand, respond to new regulatory mandates and market conditions, and just help us calculate those costs associated with market prices. Technical services are based on a fixed charge per megawatt hours, that is essentially MCE's load, while scheduling services are based on contracted amounts. This line item is projected to be $1.4 million for the upcoming fiscal year, which is a 9.8% increase against this year's budget. And that increase is due to an uptick in MCE's load because of the addition of the City of Hercules to our service area. And it also captures regular inflationary increases in the contracts. Next slide, please. Next, we have service fees, which are paid to PG&E. These fees are for administrative and billing services that they charge to the agency. And the fees are based on a fixed fee per meter. So again, the increase in customers by adding the City of Hercules also means an increase in the number of meters. This line is projected to be $2.7 million for the next fiscal year, which represents a 7% increase against this year's approved budget. Next slide, please. Next, we have legal and policy services. This line captures all the external support that the agency receives for legal counsel, as well as support with regulatory proceedings. This line is projected to be $1.5 million, which represents an 8% increase against this year's approved budget. This line typically tends to see modest increases year over year, and some of that is due to the support that we get from the California Community Choice Association. So we will take a couple of minutes to provide a summary of what CalCCA does for MCE. So I will pass this to Greg now, who will talk to us about that.
Thank you, Efren. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and directors. My name is Greg Tillman. I'm the Associate Director of Rates for MCE. I wanted to take a couple of minutes and go through some of the value, take a look at some of the value we receive from our relationship with CalCCA. Our policy team partners with the CalCCA to address matters that directly impact the CCA and MCE's customers, including our autonomy and jurisdiction, energy procurement reliability, rate design and cost allocation across various regulatory bodies that we work with, the California Public Utility Commission, the California Energy Commission and the California Independent System Operator. So MCE and CalCCA also partner on California legislative advocacy efforts impacting the CCAs and our customers. Next slide, please. So what you saw on the last slide was all the activities we're working on. We weren't going to talk about all of them, just give you a picture of what we work on. And this slide really talks about the value of our relationship with CalCCA and the partnership, what the partnership brings to us in terms of our regulatory wins over the past year, and you'll see that list. We won't talk about the regulatory losses, but those also are very important, that we can work with CalCCA and the other 20 plus CCAs that we combine our resources with and conduct this activity. So regulatory advocacy, the associated regulatory wins, these are particularly critical amidst growing affordability concerns that we face. We talk about them in every board meeting. MCE and CalCCA's strong advocacy will help continue to stabilize costs and ensure a level playing field for CCA customers. Having spoken about winners, it brings to mind that I want to send this straight back to Efren to continue on the operating cost.
Thank you, Greg. Right back at you. So going back to our operating expenses, the next line here is communication services. This line captures expenses related to advertising, customer notices, program marketing, community outreach, and special events. So the next time you see an ad for MCE, or if you go to an event and you see that it's sponsored by MCE, you should think back to this line because it's all coming out of this specific line. This line is projected to be $2.2 million, which reflects a 10.2% decrease against the current year approved budget. And that is because we no longer need certain expenses related to the enrollment of the city of Hercules now that we're right about to start service in that city. So we're able to reduce this line item. Next slide, please. Next, we have other professional services. This includes services related to accounting, auditing services, and it also includes consultants related to the development of MCE's customer relationship management software, our CRM, as well as our data warehouse. For the upcoming fiscal year, we're also including a new item for federal compliance, which is related to the federal earmarks and grants that we have. They do have a federal compliance component to it, and so we are budgeting for that new expense. This line item is projected to be $4.7 million, which represents a 50.3% increase against the current year approved budget. Next slide, please. Next, we have general and administrative. This is a line item that captures a number of expenses not captured anywhere else. That includes recruitment tools, membership dues paid to memberships like CalCCA, as well as subscriptions, software licenses, marketing technologies, office supplies, and a number of other day-to-day expenses. This line item is projected to be $4.9 million, or 18.8% above the current year approved budget. Increased costs are due to higher membership dues for CalCCA, as well as increased staff recruitment expenses for the proposed staff for the upcoming fiscal year. It also captures additional licenses needed for the various softwares and tools that the agency uses. Next slide, please. Next, we have occupancy. This line captures primarily rent, but it also captures maintenance related to both offices. The proposed budget for this line is $453,000, which is a 55.1% decrease against the current approved budget. And that is due to two reasons. Number one, we are moving to a new suite at the Concord office, which comes with rent abatement for a few months. And number two, the Centerville office building was purchased, so there's no rent due on this building. Next slide, please. And last but not least, we have contingency. So none of the previous line items have any contingency embedded in them. Contingency is what's shown here, $1.5 million. This is managed by finance, and we use it to accommodate any unexpected expenses in the previously mentioned line items. This amount is staying flat year over year. Next slide, please. Okay, so putting it all together, the total operating expenses are projected to be $50.2 million. That is a 10.3% increase against this year's approved budget. I've been at MCE for well over 5 years now, and typically projected results or actual results tend to come in below the budget. So if the past is an indication of the future, I think we can expect actuals for next fiscal year to also be under the amounts that you see here. Next slide, please. So now moving on to non-operating revenues and expenses. Next slide. And first, we have non-operating revenues. We have grant income as the first line here. This is projected to be $3.2 million, and this captures portions of certain grants going into the operating fund. This is a 35.3% decrease against the current year approved budget. We don't budget for other income. As you'll notice here, we do show some actuals, but we don't budget for it, as it mostly captures damages that our suppliers pay the agency when they don't perform according to their contract. Then we have interest income. This is projected to be $15 million, which is a 25% increase against this year's approved budget. We are assuming a conservative yield of 3% on MCE's reserves, which accounts for potential rate cuts by the Fed that are expected this calendar year. Next slide, please. Next, we have non-operating expenses. And we have two lines here. The first one is banking fees and financing costs. This line is staying flat at $225,000, and this really captures the fees that we pay on our credit facility that we have with the Royal Bank of Canada. Then we have grant expenses, and you'll notice that this equals our grant income, and that is simply the accounting treatment of grant income. We can only recognize income when we have an equal amount in expenses. It is not additional revenue to MCE. Next slide, please. So now moving to the projected change in net position. The change in net position, which is what you get after you subtract all the expenses from the revenues that we have seen so far, is $25.7 million. This is a decrease of 57.4% against this year's approved budget. And again, going back to the earlier slides, a lot of that has to do with the increased cost of energy, as well as the increases in the operating expenses lines that we just discussed. So assuming a budgeted net position beginning of period of $445 million, the budgeted net position end of period would be $471 million. Next slide, please. So the last section of the operating fund budget is the proposed capital expenditures, interfund transfers, and other section. And these are essentially capital outlays or transfers that take place after the change to net position line. Next slide. First, we have software transmission upgrade. Staff is recommending $10.25 million to implement a software-based transmission upgrade that would help alleviate a lot of the curtailment and congestion that we're seeing at a certain PPA project in the Central Valley. This investment could result in savings of up to $20 million per year. And we do have more details on this item in a few slides. Next, we have the purchase of the Somerville office building. This is $5.4 million, and this was previously approved by your board back in July of 2024. Related to this, we are also recommending $349,000 for office improvements and retrofits, with most of that related to the Somerville office and about $60,000 related to the Concord office. And last but not least, we have a recommended transfer of $2.4 million to the Program Development Fund, which is about 50% of the Deep Green premium income. So after we take into account all the capital expenditures and transfers shown here, the budgeted net increase in operating fund balance would be $7.2 million. Next slide. So that is the end of the MCE operating fund budget. And now we'll take a look at the remaining three funds that MCE has as well. And the first one is the Program Development Fund budget. So this budget captures all the programs related to installing EV chargers at multifamily places and also workplaces. And it also captures our efforts with increasing EV adoption by providing EV incentives to income qualified customers. We also have some programs related to heat pump water heaters. For the upcoming fiscal year, again, we're recommending a transfer of $2.4 million from the operating fund. We're also including $260,000 from a Marin Community Foundation grant, plus $100,000 from community benefits funds. So total revenue for this fund would be $2.7 million. And going down to the expenditures, total expenditures would be $6.5 million, which would bring the fund balance at the end of period to zero. Next slide, please. Next, we have the proposed Resiliency Virtual Power Plant Fund budget. Next slide. And this fund captures our efforts with installing energy storage paired with solar, with the goal of allowing our customers to retain power during power outages. It also captures our efforts with scaling our virtual power plant. So there are two focuses of this fund. For the upcoming fiscal year, we are capturing $1.2 million in a CEC grant meant to help us scale our VPP efforts. We're also capturing $200,000 from a federal earmark, plus $72,000 from an existing Marin Community Foundation grant. No transfer from the operating fund is needed at this time, as there are sufficient funds to cover all the expenses shown below. So in total revenue would be $1.4 million, and total expenses would be $4.4 million, which would bring the fund balance at end of period to $157,000. Next slide. And last but not least, we have our energy efficiency fund budget. So this fund captures all of our programs related to energy efficiency for residential and commercial buildings. These are funds that we already have in the bank, in MCE's bank accounts. So these are not funds that we're waiting for. The proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year is $19.5 million, which is a decrease from the current year's approved budget. And that is because the agency had to return unspent funds that had been allocated to summer reliability programs. And due to lower than expected participation, the funds had to be returned. So again, because these are grant monies, you'll notice that the revenue equals the expenses, as again, grants are not additional revenue to the agency. They simply cover the expenses that they're supposed to cover. And with that said, this is the last slide, and we can now jump to your questions.
Very good. Thank you for that thorough presentation from staff. Are there any questions from members of the board for staff? We'll start here in the Concord office. San Ramon, council member, go ahead.
Thank you, Gabe. Thanks for amazing presentation. Thanks. So my first question is regarding page 28, which says about which talks about federal grants. So as there are the current climate, as we are all are aware about how things are changing, right? So just wanted to check, is there any legislative changes can significantly impact the budget with the proposed, like what are the changes that's happening at federal level? Especially considering we are green energy.
That
Yeah. I'm
Oh,
just pausing to see. Stephanie, do you want to jump in on that? I'm also happy to.
I mean, I'm happy to weigh in that all of the federal earmarks that we have been looking at are in process. Some of those are further along than others, but they are all in process, including that one that was paused for a moment. So I hate to say in the current environment that we're feeling good about them, but we're feeling better than we have been. And then I think those are the only federal changes at this point that could potentially impact revenue.
Okay, you don't want to jinx it, so that's
Exactly.
Then I have a question on page 23. So there is on page 23, it says, I think page 23, which says increase cost based on the fixed fee meter, and increase is mostly adding to city Hercules, right? So what is the fee for per? I want to understand what is this per meter and how much it is per customer.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. It really is tied to the cost of power. So in the past, when we've added new communities, it's been in an environment when the cost of power was a bit lower than what we were paying overall for our existing portfolio. Since we've seen a big increase in market prices for power over the last few years, we've been aware that the potential cost for adding the city of Hercules was going to be the first one where we actually saw an increase in serving that load. When we brought the proposal to add Hercules to MCE service area, we presented those results, and the board was interested in moving forward anyway, knowing that it would be there would be other good reasons to add the community of Hercules, and in the long run, there would be definitely a net value. But we've been aware that there would be a bit of an upfront hit to the budget just to purchase power for that new load. So that's a quick answer. Efren, do you want to add anything I might have missed there?
Did that answer your question, Director?
No, sorry, I'm trying to understand, but maybe I'm missing some piece here. So when you say fixed fee per meter, what exactly that fee per meter?
Yeah.
Like, is it like whenever the new customer comes in, that customer need to pay that fee, or how it works?
Yeah, so each customer that receives MCE service pays that, or the agency pays for that fee, Director. And I believe it's 35 cents per meter.
And I can add on a little bit of clarity for that. The service fee is because PG&E bills our customers and tracks the data for our customer usage, and they charge us a fixed fee per meter to include our charges on their bill. And it's increasing because we have more accounts than ever before. That's because of Hercules, and also because we've had really high retention rates in the last year. So new accounts are starting, new buildings, and customers who have opted out in the past are also joining.
Oh, okay, that answers my question, because I'm just coming back from one of this water district where they increased the fee to $111,000 per meter for water line. So
Yeah, and I'll just clarify, the customer
just wanted to
doesn't
make sure that we are not doing something like that. Okay, great. And what my last question? So you mentioned about outreach, right? So as we talked in the previous meeting also about this outreach, community outreach, that's part of your Could you please share a little bit more details on what is the plan to outreach, community outreach?
Do you mean specifically to Hercules, Director?
Yeah, so what is the plan? Like, if you can share some of your plans on your community outreach, so we can get some idea. Because when residents reach out to us saying that, hey, why I see a line item MCE in my bill versus if there are still people don't understand that question, so how we can address that?
Our outreach to Hercules, excuse me, has been multifaceted over the last few months. Excuse me for just one moment. Sorry about that. We've had a number of workshops, both in person and virtually, to meet the public, answer their questions, address their concerns. And we've also had a number of mailers that started being delivered in February to customers in Hercules to inform them of the enrollment into MCE from PG&E starting in April. And there's also been a number of digital advertisements that we've used on social media to communicate the change.
No, I'm not talking just specifically for Hercules, but overall, all agencies or all cities which are involved using the MCE services, right? So how we can educate people that, hey, you are not getting any additional fee because you're using MCE. You're paying what you're supposed to be paying for energy, rather than right now, many people think that once they see MCE as a line item, they think that that is the additional fee they are paying. So we need to, if you can, you don't need to answer me on this one, but if you can make sure that we put that as part of our community outreach program plan, that will be great. I appreciate that. And yeah, so.
Yeah, happy to connect after this. We do have a number of resources available and in development currently to help explain the various components of the energy statement that customers receive each month from PG&E. We also have a community development team that works with the community, works with CBOs, community-based organizations in the service area to meet customers where they are and to help educate them about their energy bills. And I would also just give a plug to our customer operations team, who does a great job of answering questions for customers when they call into the call center with concerns or questions about their bill.
That will be great. Thank you. One final comment. This is not a question, but final comment. Shaheen, thank you very much for sharing your revised staffing. I know as a hiring manager myself, it is always challenging, but then looking at it and revising and sharing the update and without impact doing that, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Ross. Any questions? Yes, City of Benicia.
Benicia, yeah. Just a quick question about the contingency funding. And in the budget, I think programmed $1.5 million for contingency funding, which is controlled by finance. If I was doing some math right, I think there's about $600,000 to $800,000 worth of federal earmarked grants. Now, I sat in a 2-hour meeting with Congressman Garamendi earlier today, and he basically said earmarks on the table are basically not going to be guaranteed. He doesn't feel very positive that they're going to be delivered. So I just want to make sure everyone feels comfortable with our contingency fund of 1.5, with almost half of that being federal dollars, give or take.
That's a really good question. This is Vic and Kasarjan. So Efren explained the contingency fund is basically our own costs. And we don't want every single department to have a buffer in their expenses. So what we have been doing for several fiscal years is that we have one contingency for our own expenses that is not commingled with any grant-related funding. That's completely separate. Now, knock on wood, we've been doing good lately with the federal and even the state funding, but those are completely separate.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Any other questions here in Concord? Next, we'll go to the Marin, Solano, and Napa offices. Madam Clerk.
Yes, Director Kohler.
Yes, sorry, thank you. I'm looking at the packet, and there's a page in the packet that talks about grants and earmarks. And I just saw that Marin just lost 2 million in federal earmarks, and at least most of the federal funding on this page, you have high risk, but there's one that's an earmark that you have low risk. I think some of that stuff is getting clawed back, but that's not my huge question because the federal, most of it you have high risk, so I think you're considering that in the budget. But we also know that the governor issued his January budget 2 days before the LA fires. And we also know from that, and I sit on a legislative committee, that that budget isn't real. And what we're going to see is the May revise, and there's huge cuts coming. So we have a lot of CEC funding, a lot of CPUC funding on this page, and I know we're talking about 3.3 grant income for this year, because some of these are more years. I'm just wondering if we should be a little more cautious because we really won't know till May, and I realize this is a time for us to do our budget, but for the state, it's different. So I'm just wondering if we should be a little more cautious on some of that funding and maybe consider, I know this isn't going to be popular, a little more cutting back on some of the staffing that we're doing. I know we cut back from 16 to 13, which I think was very prudent. But it sort of seems to me like we are in uncertain times, and maybe before we staff up, we should wait a little more and bring a budget adjustment if we get good news. So what are your thoughts, Dawn? I see you looking at me, so I think you're going to answer.
Yeah, I'd like to say a little bit about that. And then I'd also like to invite Alice to comment on the grants more broadly. But I'm really glad you asked about the staffing question because it does seem a little non-intuitive to be doing an increase in our staffing when we're in a tighter budget year than we were last year. And so I want to explain there are really 3 key areas that each of the new staff kind of fit into, 3 buckets. The first bucket is grants. There are 3 positions that are directly tied to grants. We do have the ability to pause grant activity if we see that the funding is starting to go away. We do have the ability to make adjustments as we go. But I want to emphasize that the CPUC funding that comes into MCE is coming from the public purpose charge, which is on everyone's energy bill. So essentially, it's all the California energy customers that are supplying that funding, not the governor, not the federal government. So that funding seems extremely low risk. The CEC funding is for things like growing our VPP program, virtual power plant. That grant, if it were to slow down or not come through, that might be an area where we would slow down our VPP activities. But that first bucket is the 3 staff going into the grants category. The second category is we have a number of efforts underway through our technology and analytics department to create efficiencies in the agency. And we've built a data warehouse that we're using to automatically be able to track and ping customers based on what their needs are, who's going to need an upgrade, who can save money through this program that we're offering. And we've been doing a lot of manual work to run those programs that are staff intensive. If we were to implement these efficiencies that are halfway being done and will be complete by the end of the year, we're going to actually save money going forward and be able to rely less on the manual work that we're doing. If we were to, instead of hiring staff, if we were to pay consultants to finish that work, the cost overall would be about double. So the approach we're putting forward is really to create efficiencies rather than stalling work halfway through and having to restart it a year or 2 later. And then the last area where you see some additions is on the legal team. And those are all for policy positions, regulatory advocacy in particular. And yeah, I know because you've been on the board for so long, Director Kohler, you will remember our discussions about the PCIA, the Power Charge and Difference Adjustment, also known as the exit fee that PG&E charges our customers. PG&E has requested a reopening of that proceeding at the California Public Utilities Commission. And if we can go to the slide, I think it's the next slide that has the teeter-totter on it. It's hard to read the text on this, but if y'all are able to pull it up on your screen or we can send it to you, the regulatory wins have some very large dollar amounts next to them in the millions and hundreds of millions. So if we don't engage on the policy front, we're going to see continued scope creep. We're going to see continued decisions that impact our budget in a very big way. So this investment in policy staff to help protect our agency against those added costs really is an effort to keep costs low. With that, I want to hand it over to Alice in case you want to add anything else about our level of certainty on the grants or our ability to pivot if we see changes there.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. Hi, Alice Havener-Dotton, VP of Customer Programs. And the only thing I wanted to add is that the vast majority of the outside funding that is offsetting our staffing costs is coming from the CPUC public purpose charge that Dawn was describing. And actually in this fiscal year budget, there's none of the federal earmarks are offsetting staffing costs. So all of that is going towards actual project work. And part of the work that we're doing right now is understanding the risk involved and how we can start those projects and have the certainty that we'll pay for them. But if the funding doesn't come through, we just won't do the projects that that funding is meant to support. So the federal uncertainty won't impact our staffing costs or the amount that we're able to offset through external funding.
Okay, any other questions from Moran?
Can I just follow up quickly?
Sure, go ahead. Director Kohler.
Thank you. And thank you, Dawn and Alice. Just a question. So the VPP is CEC 5 million. And I know we can stop doing the work if it doesn't come through, but that is a lot. And is there staffing associated? I guess my concern is if we staff up and we don't have the funding, because I realize consultants are a lot, but they're not getting paid benefits. So loaded rates might be different. But I'm just wondering, are we staffing based on the 5 million coming in for VPP, for example?
I will let Alice comment on the amount of staff that's in that budget, or actually Alexandra may want to comment on that. But I will say that we're budgeting based on our current best information while keeping a close eye on everything so that we can pivot if needed. But Alexandra, do you want to comment on the staffing element in our VPP grant?
Certainly, it's a good question. Good evening, everyone. Alexandra, VP of Strategic Initiatives. The VPP Flex grant, which was approved by the CEC on their consent calendar earlier in the week, it does include staffing costs. For the majority of the staff that are involved in the grant are already MCE employees. There's only a single new hire that would take place to support that in-house knowledge and reduce our dependency on some of these third-party partners so that we keep that expertise within MCE as we reduce our dependency on those subcontractors. And the hiring for that single position for the tech and analytics team wouldn't happen until later in the year. So there would be some time in case that May budget amendment came out and we heard news from Newsom and others that there were going to be cutting that if there were cuts that would impact the VPP Flex funding, we wouldn't have already hired this person by that May revise.
Hey, thank you very much, all of you. Appreciate it.
Director Gulati has her hand raised.
Yes, thank you so much. So related to grants as well, I was curious about the Pro 4, the climate bond, and see at the state level something that was approved by the electors. I know that one of the priorities is clean green energy. Do we see from MCE like any funding coming from that source?
We do not have any direct funding coming from that source, but we are weighing in on an advocacy front related to that.
Great. And I mentioned before in the executive committee, I'm very happy we're investing into more legal around policy because around the state, I think all the CCAs are really looking into how you can collaborate and really trying to tackle some of the big ones like PG&E and around policy and hopefully make it better. It seems to be when I attend the Cal cities, it tends to be like all of the cities had the same issues around the big corporations like PG&E and things like that. So thank you.
Madam Clerk, any other questions from Marin?
Yes, Director Andre?
Great, thank you. I want to echo Director Kohler's comments. I am concerned about personnel as well, although from a slightly different direction. If I look at this budget, it feels like curtailment is a major risk. But when I look at the energy costs that are budgeted, I can't see exactly how much curtailment costs we've budgeted for, but there's only 1.4 million in contingencies on a $765 million energy cost line item. So I'm a little concerned that we may not have enough room in case something happens with the market for curtailment. And so I think the conservative thing to do would be try to control some of our discretionary costs. So if someone could answer, have we factored in for curtailment and how much in the energy costs for the budget? That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to hand that over to Vicken, but I do want to start off just by explaining that curtailment is not captured in the contingency line item. It is built in as our net expected costs in the power supply category. And we do have a pretty good idea of what the curtailment is likely to be based on historic amounts, although it could certainly go up. Vicken, do you want to comment further on that?
No, I think you covered it well done. We're going to get into the presentation pretty quickly and we can take questions then as well.
So do you have a number for the curtailment that you're budgeting for in the budget?
19 million.
Okay, thank you. And then I also had a question on the demand rates. It's, when I'm looking at the budget, basically.
Actually, Director Andre, we are going to do a next set of slides on that. So
perfect.
If you may want to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Director Wilkinson?
Thank you. I wanted to just follow up on some comments from fellow directors about the personnel budget. So I have served on this board, I think, for about 5 years now, and every year that I've been here, there's been very significant increases in staff compensation over that period. And so I went back and looked through the functional statements, and 7 years ago, our budget for personnel was about $8 million with about 80 employees, and we're now at $29.6 million with about 120 employees. So that's a 350% increase in the personnel budget over 7 years. The average compensation per head, or the average cost per head in this budget, is $250,000 per head of staff. And so the question I have is, with PG&E's rates, some of the highest in the country, and our rates currently above those of PG&E, how do we go back to our districts and explain why we are approving a budget with such a significant increase in compensation costs? It isn't just for new employees. This budget is suggesting about a third of staff should be promoted. And in the environment that we are currently in, both in terms of the energy markets and the economy in general, and the lack of trust in government, I am just very concerned about the perception that this budget will give to our residents who voted for us and who we represent, what that will say about this public agency. So I would love to hear from management what we should say to our residents when they question those types of compensation levels and those types of promotions in a very uncertain environment.
So it sounds like your question is about how our compensation levels are set to attract and retain staff. So I'm going to see if Shaheen Khan, if you'd like to weigh in on that. I know we did a presentation in XCOM at the end of last year where we touched on a lot of that. But maybe you can summarize briefly a response to that, Shaheen?
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. So thinking about attracting and retaining staff, at MCE, we have a lot of folks that have joined the agency at various points in their careers. And as they continue to grow and develop at the agency, they start to develop really attractive skills. This attractive skills is highly competitive in our CCA landscape. We've been around the longest. We have systems and tools and processes and staff that we've invested in, and that goes back to that institutional knowledge. So salaries and compensations tend to grow as folks stay with the agency. So if we talk about promotions, for example, we have a set process in place. As folks stay and as folks invest their time at MCE, they start to do more. They move through levels. For example, they can go from program manager to a senior program manager to a principal, for example. So the promotions that are being indicated, although there are about a third of staff that are getting promoted, they're getting promoted within a set schedule, within a set job description, within a set salary range and level. So each promotion does not necessarily mean someone's going to go into a different salary band or a salary level. Rather, they're progressing within their salary range. And also thinking a little bit more about, benefits, for example, like I had touched on before, benefits also can start to compound as salaries continue to grow. For example, a retirement is based off of salary, and as salaries continue to grow, that line item continues to expand as well.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'll just comment on that attrition rates I don't think are any higher within the CCAs than they are within most public agencies, and most public agencies are much more conservative with their compensation increases. So this is just very difficult to be asked to approve these levels of compensation and promotions at a time when we're in very difficult financial and economic times.
Director Salter and then Director Andre.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just echo and appreciate Director Kohler's comments. I think all of us represent cities and towns, and we see the realities of what, our own budgets are sort of dealing with and the fear and uncertainty that is just inherent in the economy right now. And I commend MCE for wanting to grow and wanting to achieve goals and continue its mission. I just think we all collectively understand that the environment is uncertain, as the Fed chairman said this week. So it's just something to really consider or think about. My questions are twofold. One, the first question is just about, we've been told over and over about building the reserves and how that really helped us with our credit ratings. Vicken or Maida, your views just about the credit ratings, because this budget is proposing to pull from those reserves now. And as many have said, we may need to pull more reserves if things get worse later on. So just some thoughts on the credit rating going in reverse by pulling reserves ahead of time. And then the second one is on I mentioned this, I think, at the last meeting, but slide 12, just about the energy cost breakdown. There's only a contingency of 14 million. And in XCOM, we heard that was from, I forget who worked on this piece, but that's a very small contingency. Can you let us know what was the energy contingency last year and why, why just a 1% to 2% contingency given, we've heard hot days, we had a very good year last year with not very many hot days. So just understanding how big that contingency should be built into the energy side compared to last year, and how you got comfort around, making that contingency smaller. because if there's a blow up, we're already stretching to take reserves this year. We may need more reserves if that contingency isn't big enough. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Maida and Vicken if they'd like to weigh in on the credit issue that you raised. That's a great question. But I do want to just draw your attention to attachment A in your staff reports, the first attachment right after the staff report. If you go down about midway through, you'll see the contingency line item. It's right above the total operating expenses line item. And you'll see the contingency amount there for our current fiscal year is 1.5 million, which is the same as the proposed budget before you this evening. So it's not going down.
No, sorry. I'm talking about the contingency on slide 12 for the energy costs. So
Okay.
sorry, you have
Thanks
it up
for
on the screen right
clarifying that.
now. So it's 14
Great.
million. I was wondering what that contingency was for energy costs last year. And this is just for the full board, but we sort of talked about this in XCOM, but I'd like just some clarity from last year to this year of that contingency. And if we think really that it's big enough to cover what might be, a difficult summer.
Perfect. So I'm going to ask Maida and Vicken if they'd like to weigh in on the credit question. And then we also have John DeLessie on the line from PEA who can comment on the contingency for power supply. But Maida, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you. So regarding the credit agency, so we're asking for up to 13 million transfer, and we are going to monitor closely. We're not asking for the 13 million. We're asking for up to 13 million. So we might not need to go into all of that. And we haven't finished this fiscal year, and we might be able to add to our reserves in this year. And we have deposited 70 million, and it's a moving target. So as of right now, we could deposit up to 70 million. So we're almost capped out there. And with the possibility of what we can add from this current fiscal year. So that is regarding our reserves. So for us, having the ability to show to the rating agencies that we have enough reserves, that we have a balanced budget this year, and that next year we also forecast having a balanced budget. We're confident that we won't have issues with that because we have a strong financial agency, and we can show that to the rating agencies.
Okay, so sorry. So you haven't had any conversations with them about a proposed drawdown of reserves. I know that the rating agencies have meetings with you guys.
Yeah, it's not something we need to talk to them about. It's something that is already written into the policy. So when there's a unexpected regulatory change, that's exactly what it's for. So we're just following the procedures that they're already aware of. But I want to turn it over to John DeLessie. John, if you want to comment on the contingency for power supply.
Absolutely. Hi, John DeLessie with Pacific Energy Advisors. And so the contingency in the proposed power cost budget, it's similar to what we used last year for the existing budget. And specifically, it's 20% assumed price increase for any open positions that we have in the portfolio. So open positions being the amount of energy we project that we'll need to buy, but it's not yet under contract. And so since those prices could move against us, that's where the contingency of the 14 million is coming in. It's just an assumption, a little bit of a risk factor applied there. We have MCE in past years, I think going back 2 years ago, had a much larger contingency in the power budget. That was coming off of a couple of years where we had some significant heat waves and real disruption in the power markets. So, MCE has had contingencies on power as much as I think it was approaching $100 million 1 year, following one of those summers where the prices just went to extremely high levels, and it just seemed like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Thankfully, the markets have calmed down a bit, so we don't think that we need to have nearly that high of a contingency in the budget. I was the one at XCOM who made the comment that it's on the low side, and it certainly is on the low side when you consider, 14 million out of the total power cost budget. It's a pretty low percentage. And, certainly things can go against us that would exceed that contingency on the power supply side. And I think somebody brought up the concept of congestion, and that's one area where if we do see higher congestion levels than we saw last year, we could see that contingency eaten into and even exceeded. So hopefully that answers the question, but just to get right to answer the question, it's pretty much the same contingency level that we had in the prior budget.
Thank you.
Director Andre?
Great, thanks. I was wondering if you could put up the income statement for the operating fund, the operating income statement on the slides. I have a question. It might be easier if we're looking at the same numbers. There's no page number on this. It's page 35 on the PDF of the agenda. Sorry, there's no page number on the.
Director Andre, we kind of sliced, we don't have one for the entire attachment.
The entire income statement, you don't have that one? Okay. All right, well.
Which part do you, we have pieces. Which part are you interested on?
Okay, so my first question is going to be back to the energy costs, because talking about the 14 million in contingency, last year, the budget for energy costs was 688 million. The actuals for this year is 735 million. So that's an increase of almost 50 million of energy costs in excess of what we budgeted for 2024. So, and this year we're budgeting 765 million. So just a $30 million increase. I mean, we ate through the 14 million in contingency last year. I think there's high risk that we eat through the contingency this year. Just given where, curtailment and other issues, congestion, weather, et cetera. So I think that's a major risk in this budget. And secondly, I did want to just ask on the personnel expenses. There was one of the buckets where we were going to hire personnel to offset costs that are currently being contracted out. But when I look at the expense items, the only two expense items that are going down are communication services and occupancy, which I believe is rent, because we purchased this building. So all the other line items for other professional services, G&A, legal and policy services are all increasing. So I'm wondering, where is the offsetting expense savings from the new hires? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll respond to that, since I'm the one that made the comment about the three buckets. The comment I was making was, if we were to not hire staff for those roles and instead contract out support for policy advocacy and our technology and analytics work to expand our data warehouse and our automation and efficiencies, it would cost double. Another alternative would be to simply not do that and keep our policy advocacy smaller than planned, and keep our technology and analytics progress, put it on hold, and try to revive it in the future. That would be another alternative. But you're also asking a question about how we've projected power supply costs. And I want to invite John DeLacy, if he wants to comment further on that. We do look at forward market prices when we're projecting our power supply costs for the year. But you will notice that the longer you're with MCE that there's a lot of volatility. That it can go up and down by millions, and so we do have to build in a lot of assumptions. And we've looked at where the market prices are now. But John, is there anything else that you want to mention as far as what went into our projections here?
Yeah, I think really a main driver of the budget and the certainty around the budget with respect to power supply is, how much of the expected energy that the energy that we expect to sell to customers do we have already under contract at fixed prices? And so heading into the upcoming fiscal year, a very large percentage of the total energy requirements are already contracted. So that's the greatest source of variability in the budget. But still having locked in prices for the expected load, there's still variation, right? Load can certainly vary from the forecast. And if we have an extremely hot summer, an abnormally hot summer, that's the time when electric usage is higher than expected, and that's also the time that prices in the market are higher than normal. So weather is a large driver of variability in the power supply costs. The other factor that was already mentioned is congestion, and the really MCE has a lot of renewable resources that it has under contract, fixed price power purchase agreements, and those resources earn revenue from the markets. And that helps offset the contract payments that MCE makes to the owners of these resources for the power. And what can happen is that the price that these resources earn can be different than expectations, because the price that they earn is very dependent on location, and that is very dependent on congestion as well. So a lot goes into projecting the power supply costs. A large part of it, is the load forecast itself, which is done at an hourly level of granularity. And then all of the contracts that are in place, the power supply contracts, and then to the extent that there are open positions, that's where the projections of the market prices are used to value those open positions and estimate, what it will cost in the market when those positions are closed. So, I think when we think of variability in the budget, the 14 million that we're talking about, I think it's under 2% of the total budget, roughly in that range. And I think we could easily think of a plus or minus 5% as a more reasonable range of what the budget, the actual expenses might look like, considering the contract positions that MCE has moving into this budget year, right? And so that's a big factor. Is like I said, virtually all of the energy required or expected to be required is already under contract. So that eliminates a lot of the uncertainty, but not all of it.
Hi. Question. So my question is about staffing as well. And I'm wondering, you talked about creating efficiencies, and I'm wondering if staff are doing less manually. Is there a plan to review whether or not that much staff is needed moving forward after those efficiencies are achieved? That's one question. And then my second question is about promotions, and doesn't that change the org chart? Doesn't that create vacancies at the lower levels and redundancies at the higher levels?
Shaheen, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that. On the latter part of the question, it doesn't, because the promotions are following career pathways. So, for example, the job fundamentally is not changing. They're adding on additional skills and years of experience that's allowing them to take on more, but their core work doesn't change as they kind of progress through for the promotions that we have anticipated for this upcoming fiscal year. And then could you repeat the first part of your question?
The first part of my question was about efficiencies and whether or not, if there is less manual work to do, if that will be reviewed for staff reductions.
And actually, Shaheen, if you want, I have one comment on that, if you don't mind. And also Shuvo might want to weigh in here with technology and analytics, because he's the one driving a lot of these efficiencies that all of our staff are so looking forward to. But he introduced a term recently that we've been using called searching for artifacts. Are there things that we're doing that we don't need to be doing anymore? And that's something that we spend time doing. We look for ways that we can scale back workloads at the end of each year before we begin developing our budget. So that is an ongoing process. But I want to also emphasize that equally important is our ability to deepen our impact in communities. So in some cases, we're not necessarily looking to get rid of staff positions because we're creating efficiencies. We may be able to minimize staff needs, but we're also looking for opportunities to expand our impact in the communities with the same amount of people. But Shuvo, do you want to say any more regarding how technology and analytics is helping create efficiencies?
Happy to, Don. Hi, everyone. My name is Shubha Chaudhary. I'm the VP of Technology Analytics at MCE. So a couple of things here. In kind of the new norm that we're all working with here, data is really, the currency with which we buy efficiency. One of the things that we have been looking at is, in order to identify our customers, in order to better understand what they need, how they use energy, how that affects our load profile, we are trying to weave a story, a narrative of how energy moves from the time it is bought all the way to the time it is used. That is a hard narrative to weave because, as most of you know, our markets are a bit disjointed. The settlement happens at the customer level. We buy at the wholesale level. There are certain disconnects in that have always existed. A lot of the work that my team does is specifically trying to connect all of that together. It is also work that we do in order to facilitate data access. So, as you know, we get a lot of customer data. And for the first part of MCE's existence, when we did not have the data warehouse or when we did not have the CRM, all of this data got held somewhere in an Excel sheet or in a large database, and it wasn't really used or utilized in the way that we could. Now, I'll give you a frontline example of how data can be accessed and used for benefits. This board approved, the MCE Cares program last year. We were able to identify, build, launch a program in a matter of weeks. Now, that usually would have taken us months, if not the better part of a year, normally, if we did not have access to data in the way that we have today. So in addition to some of these efficiencies, we are also doing new things that we could not do before. We understand our customers in a way better way than we could before. It is the reason why we can launch programs like the VPP, like our solar storage project, like our battery project. Most of these projects rely on heavy amounts of data, and without having those data, we would not have been able to launch these projects. So what I would say is that it's not just a matter of making more efficiencies in the process we already have, but also in adding additional capacity to what MCE can actually do in serving the communities that we work with.
Thank you.
And Vice Chair, I just wanted to do a time check. We do have two other parts of the slide presentation that we'll get to after this round of Q&A. But I think I see one more hand up here. Maybe, yeah.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about staffing. I did have a question. What is the attrition rate for staff at MCE?
Shaheen, do you want to take that?
I do. I'd have to look it up, but I can reference that in a few minutes when I find it.
Okay, that's great. And I do want to talk a little bit about staffing and benefits and the cost. I run a small business, and every year the cost for benefits goes up, and it goes up a lot. I've seen health insurance benefits increase by 25%. And that doesn't matter whether, you've been there a year or you've been there 5 years. So in looking at this budget and in looking at some of the benefits, that's where I see the increased medical, dental, and vision 17% change. With the economy right now, there's going to be other things that we're seeing, insurance, all the things that you have to pay for when you have employees. Those costs aren't static. They go up regardless of how many you have and regardless of seniority. But one of the things I've seen at MCE, and I don't think I need to get the actual attrition rates, is that the staff tends to stay here. And the reason they stay here is because they're compensated fairly and they're compensated for the years that they put into the organization. And why is that important? That's important because it is so hard to find and attract employees right now. In my business, if I'm not paying a market rate or I've actually above that rate, if I'm not competitive, no one's going to work here. No one's going to work here. And I think MCE is an organization that it's not just, these aren't jobs that anybody can fill. These are jobs that are done by experts. And as their expertise increases, they're the asset to our communities. They're the asset to our residents. They're what allows all of the programs that we talk about that serve all of our communities, whether all the low-income communities, the communities of color, any communities, even the higher income. And I think that when we talk about staffing, we really need to look at that and think about that. It's not just always about, oh, can we not have these employees. And when we look at the head counts, I think what was kind of amazing to me was that even in this climate, 81% of the costs for 3 new positions are going to be externally funded. So we're getting, 81% of 3 positions basically for free. So there's been a lot of talk about employees, compensation, benefits, but I can tell you the cost goes up every year, no matter what you do. And, also that it's our employees that makes MCE the organization that it is. So I think that this is a good proposal. I think we've got 106 employees. The places that we're adding them, I think policy is critical right now. We're going to be seeing policy changes coming out of the federal government. We're going to have to be doing work actually at the state level to make sure that we can counteract those things that are not going to be beneficial for the agency. When I see some of the other things, it's basically adding a position to customer programs. That is, and 2 to public affairs. That is how we communicate with our communities and our residents. It's also the day-to-day programs for customers. And one of the things that MCE did in the past that people may not know about is that MCE's entire call center used to be contracted out. It is now in-house. And that is a critical change. And that's something that shows the creativity of the people who work here, because if you have your customer departments in-house, you have control over the message. You can better serve all of our communities. So I am going to support the new hires. And I think it's also, I'm going to give a lot of credit that 3 of these positions are 81% externally funded, because I don't know how you did that, but I appreciate it. So it's really 10 positions. So thank you.
And I was able to find the attrition rate. It is about 13.5%. And just something else to kind of note is, MCE's liability for our employees ends if they choose to leave the agency, since we don't have any sort of pension type programs.
Okay, Madam Clerk, any other questions out there in Marin or Napa or Solana?
I see no raised hands here in Marin, and I do not see any raised hands in Solano or Napa.
Okay, any comments from members of the public? Madam Clerk?
I see no raised hands online and none here in San Rafael.
Okay, good. So thank you for this robust discussion. I want to bring it back here. Any further discussion on this item from our board members here in Concord?
And Vice Chair,
Director,
oh, sorry, I just wanted to make sure it was clear that we want to run through the slide deck on the last two sub items, A and B,
Sure.
before we contemplate any motion, if that's okay. I just wanted
Sure.
to make sure you knew that.
Okay, go ahead then. Thank you. Let's go ahead with the rest of the discussion.
Thank you, Vice Chair. This is Greg Tillman again, Associate Director of Rates. I need to back up to slide number 46. Thank you. Want to discuss proposed adjustments to MCE demand charges. If we can go to the next slide. We'll talk about MCE conducts an annual review, and we'll talk about the results of that review. Shows us that our rates are still competitive with PG&E. We have a slight revenue deficiency within our pro forma. And what we found in our study was MCE demand charges have become misaligned, we'll call it, with PG&E rates and the underlying capacity cost. We've had discussions. Actually, we reviewed briefly at the last board meeting, and we've had discussion at the technical and executive committee meetings, and bring the recommendation to the board to adjust the demand charges, which will align our demand charges with capacity costs. It'll increase our revenue 6.8 million, which is about 0.8% of our current revenue. No impact on the demand charge change to residential or small business customers, and there is a limited impact to the demand billed customers. Before we continue, if we can go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about what demand charges are, because we're not all always familiar with demand charges because they apply to only about 1% of our customers. Our largest commercial, industrial, and agricultural customers pay a demand charge in addition to the energy charges that we're all familiar with, which we see as kilowatt hour or kWh charges on our bill. kW charges are a charge that is what you see is kilowatt or kW on the bill, and it's a measure of the maximum rate that a customer uses energy. So it's sort of like the speedometer on your car. It tells you how much you're using right now. That's what a kW is. And it helps us to learn or see how much generation capacity typically that is required to serve an individual customer. Shuvo mentioned earlier, we buy for our entire system, we sell to individual customers. So we have to make a conversion from our purchase to the retail side, which is what we use the kW measurement for. Primarily, we try to recover the fixed costs of generation capacity, or as we talk about here, resource adequacy is really what drives that capacity number. Next slide. So in our annual rates review we conducted at the end of last year, what we saw was, or what we learned is, MCE last increased our rates January 1st of 23. So it's been over 2 years since we increased rates. Those rates remain competitive with PG&E rates, and up to this time they remain sufficient. So we haven't really seen a need to go in and update our rates. PG&E rates increased actually on January 1st, 2025. Our rates remain lower than PG&E rates. However, there was a change in the exit fee, and we've talked about this in a couple of meetings in the past months. That PCIA we talk about was updated. So it created a situation where some of our older vintage customers actually pay a slight premium, 1% to 2%. And newer vintage customers are receiving a fairly significant discount off of what they would pay under PG&E. So those changes to the PCIA we've talked about. The other thing we see in our annual rates review is that we have a slight revenue shortfall. And this is primarily attributed to the increase in supply costs that we've been talking about. So you saw those on the energy cost slide. So the other thing we noticed when we looked at that was that our demand rates have become misaligned. First, we noticed they're misaligned with PG&E demand rates, which indicates that they're not aligned with the underlying capacity costs. As we've moved through the past 2 years, PG&E has increased their demand rates. PG&E has increased their demand rates while we've held ours constant. And currently, they're about 75% of PG&E demand charges. And just for comparative, in 2023, last time we set rates, that number was 95%. So we set our demand rates to be 5% below PG&E's demand rates. Next slide, please. So the objectives we have for this proposed adjustment is to increase our revenue to address those power costs and support our revenue sufficiency, basically to bolster the budget so that we can come with a balanced budget to your board. Improve price signals for capacity costs. And specifically, what we're looking to do is improve our signals during the on-peak period. And what a price signal really does is it says to the customers that, hey, the demand, the capacity during this period is costing much more. So the rate is higher. And it says to customers, if you can reduce now, reduce now. And then at times when there's not a high cost behind a particular or during a particular time period, we can show them a lower price and they can use more. The other thing that we want to do with our adjustment is to maintain as best we can our rate competitiveness. So the increased demand charges that we're asking for is to bring them back up to that 95% level. It impacts specific rates, a few rates, those that are listed there, which are agricultural and medium to large businesses that we serve. In doing so, we will raise our rates, but they will still, as you can tell, we're bringing them up to 95% of PG&E demand charges. So we'll keep them below PG&E's gen rates as we implement this program. So our rates will still remain lower than PG&E gen rates. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about the overall objectives for rate setting at MCE. Rate setting objectives, revenue sufficiency. We've got to make sure that we have enough revenue built into our rate structures to continue our operations and meet our budget needs. We want to remain competitive. We want stability in our rates, meaning we don't want to change rates any more than we have to continue serving our customers and with the energy that we provide to them. We want customers to understand the rates and their bills. We want equity among customers, which simply means that the customers pay for the costs that they cause. It's simply a fair allocation of the cost to customers through rates. And efficiency, we want to drive efficiency using our rates. So essentially, that's what the price signals are about. So help us to utilize the resources we have more efficiently at a lower cost for customers. And if I can say that another way, it's make sure we have the prices right. Because if we send a low price signal during a time when the costs behind it are high, are we not asking our customers to increase usage during a high cost period, which brings into the cost picture higher costs to serve those customers? So having a better price signal tells them, hey, use less here so that we can reduce our costs and help everybody overall. Next slide. So what are the impacts of this change? I mentioned that it's a $6.8 million or 0.8% increase to our revenue. No residential nor small business customers are affected by this change. It impacts less than 1% of MCE customers, and that's a little less than 3,000. The impact on their bill is about a 4.4% increase on average to the MCE portion of the bill, the generation piece, or a 2% increase of the overall bill on average across. And we've listed the different rates there and what the impacts are for them. Next slide, please. As an example, and this is a question that has come up in a executive committee meeting. So if I look at a medium-sized grocery store, and it's a specific look at, about 250 kW, they use a little over 100,000 kilowatt hours or energy each month. That bill overall would currently be $29,758. The MCE portion of that bill is $15,145. After we would implement this proposed adjustment, the MCE charges would increase by $553 per month. That's about 3.6%. And the overall bill would be a 1.9% total increase. So that's just to give you a feel for the impact on something we're familiar with. Next slide. And the last thing I want to talk about is, so MCE provides the opportunity for our customers to reach out to us, or we reach out to them and help them manage these costs. So we're not raising their rates and saying, you deal with it. We're providing our customers an opportunity to let us help them. And in fact, on our notices that we sent to customers, we told them that they could reach out and talk to us about our energy efficiency programs, that we can provide a dedicated energy coach for them to help them find opportunities, and that they can participate in our Peak Flex program to reduce costs through demand response type programs. And just wanted to look back at some of the success stories from these programs. If you'll look, like a grocery warehouse, very large customer that we did a lighting project for, essentially reduced their demand by 46 kW and reduced their energy consumption by 305,000 kilowatt hours annually. And if I apply that 46 kW to this customer's bill, it could save him up to almost $3,000 a month on average. There's a large office building. We did some HVAC work. Same thing, up to $10,000 per month that we're saving that customer through the program that we offered and the project that we did with them. So I think that's all the slides I have. Yes. So happy to address any questions on the demand charge adjustment.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll start here in Concord. Any questions? Yes, Director Gross.
Hey, Greg, thanks for presentation. So in the last meeting, we did talk about this, especially when we say that this is not going to impact any residential or any small business, but whenever we are increasing these charges, they do have impact on our residents because the grocery stores or all these other industrial, any organizations, they are going to pass those charges to the customers. So in the end, customer is going to pay. And also one more thing is I know we need to compare with someone, but comparing with PG&E is, I think we, as I said, we may need to do it, but that's the, I feel, lowest bar that we are using to compare with PG&E. But I'm glad that you are doing this customer manage electric costs, helping them to address or mitigate some of this. So my question is, did you run through with like a survey or any feedback mechanism with the customers, how they're going to impact? And also, did we receive any feedback from them on this proposal?
Yes, we posted notices to our customers, and we sent all of these customers an email that we were proposing to raise the demand charge on their bills. We did not receive any direct response to or feedback from those public notices from those customers. But we didn't go out and talk to, and maybe some folks did on Jared's team, but we didn't necessarily go out and talk to each customer and say, hey, this is how it's going to impact your bill, and so on and so forth. But we have the resources available to them when they call in. We can provide them that information, and we can point them to opportunities to create that savings that we can help them with.
Yeah, that will be great, because typically when people receive like tons of this paperwork and all that, they may ignore it. But then later on, when they find that, oh, these charges are increased without their notice, that will become like as though we are just doing behind their scenes, right, without transparency. So that will start questioning about transparency. So I would definitely like to see that we do get some feedback, at least from some of the customers, about what their thought process on this demand charge increase. So thank you. That's from my side.
And then I can add, hi, everyone. It's Zabe Aaron. I'm the Vice President of Customer Operations, and I'm the signator on the letter that went out to the customers. And we did not receive any direct responses for either the emails, the posted notices, or for the mailed letters. I will say that this segment of customers is one of our most engaged, and especially when it comes to our Peak Flex programs, and the resources that we provide when it comes to reducing their cost and reducing their load. It is an understood cost of doing business when these demand charges come through, because we're talking high use customers that recognize that they're using at a high use time. So a lot of them are putting those efficiencies into their stores and their warehouses, so that they can mitigate those costs, and they recognize those costs coming in. And we will definitely, continue to do the engagement with the customers to see how we can improve upon those services. Our public affairs team with our business development managers do an excellent job of going out and speaking with these customers and helping support them on a daily and monthly basis. We'll definitely continue to do that. And then the last thing that I will note is that we have one of the highest retentions for this customer segment due to that engagement, and due to the stability in our generation rates that we provide. So the fact that we do not fluctuate or have not fluctuated with our generation costs and our generation rates makes it much easier for these businesses and customers to plan for what their costs are going to be, and they better understand through that planning what their demand charges and the demand charge influences can be. So we only had 3 customers last year that opted out of service in this customer segment for all of the rates combined. And that was a corporate decision handed down to them. So just wanted to give that information as well.
Thanks for sharing that information. So I'm glad that we do have very good customer engagement. But then I'm surprised that we didn't receive even one single feedback. That surprises me. Yeah, so I would definitely expect at least either good, bad, or they don't care, right? That kind of feedback, so that it's end of the day, it's about transparency, right? That they should feel that, oh, we are transparent about the charges that we are asking them. Thanks.
Okay, next we have a question from Danville, Director Balutz.
Hey, Zabe. This is Mark Bellotz from Danville. Quick question for you. Can you just explain to all of us the rate class, who those people are, and their geographical area? Just because I look at these numbers, I have no idea. It's like, yeah, grocery store. Where, what, who is it? So if you can just kind of give us a little rundown on that.
And before you answer, Zay, this is Catalina. I just want to flag that, and I know that you're aware, but just so that our board members are aware, we are obligated under the CPUC to not share certain data about customers. There's a 1515 rule that we have to abide by so that we're not inadvertently disclosing actual customers. So just, I know that Zay is going to be keeping that in mind when he responds.
Yes, thank you for that note, Catalina. And we're talking about mid to large commercial businesses, and they are across our entire territory, as well as larger agricultural businesses. And we're talking higher demand locations. To give you an idea, a high demand residential customer throughout our territories would be somewhere around 1,100 kilowatts per month. We're talking high demand in the 18,000 to 64,000 kWh per month. Does that help explain it a little bit?
Well, I'd like to get a little more, but that's okay. I understand. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions here in Concord? Next, we'll go to Napa. Napa, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. A question and a comment. First, I just want you to know I actually did hear from one winery client who received the notice that you got. So there was a little bit of feedback. And I think it would be helpful, at least for myself and any other board members, if we could get a copy of the letter that went out so that we can have that information when we talk to anyone who reaches out to us. That would be enormously helpful. And so that we can then certainly explain to them the Peak Flex program and the energy efficiency programs that are available, because that's really where we want to direct these folks. I think that meets the goals of MCE overall to reduce our power use. So while rates are going up, I think, hand in hand with that, we're also trying to bring total demand down. So I am supportive of this program, but I think it would be helpful, if you don't mind, to just share a copy of that so that we can share the right information with businesses that may be reaching out to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Okay, next we'll go to the Marin office. Any questions?
Director Wilkinson?
Thank you. I have just a couple of questions. And the first one is, you mentioned that the demand charge, you try and set that at 5%. I think you said below PG&E. I was just curious to know, when you combine the demand charge with the rest of the generation rates, whether for the average customer in each of these rate categories, are we above or are we below PG&E in aggregate?
We are below PG&E.
Including the rest of the generation charges?
Yeah, demand plus energy, our rates are lower than their generation rates.
Okay, perfect. That's first
And we
question.
still have the same PCIA issues that we had that we talked about in the past several meetings.
So in total, are we more or less expensive?
Depending on the vintage of the customer, we may be slightly higher. Some vintages are slightly, or not slightly, but considerably under PG&E costs.
In terms of the number of customers, because we're not talking about that many customers here, most of them, in terms of the count of them, are above or are they below? Because most of the communities came in before, was it 2018 or whenever the PCIA shifted?
Right. So I mean, I don't know the numbers specifically, Director, but I would assume more customers are at the slightly above rate than the slightly below, or significantly below.
Okay. And then the second question, I think I sort of asked this at XCOM, but I want to make sure I understand. So if you are an identical business has the same peak load, but one is at noon and one is at 6 p.m., is the demand charge the same for those two businesses, or does the demand charge adjust according to the time of day that they peak?
So the demand charge adjusts based, or there are different demand charges for different times of the day is the best way to respond to that. So they both have a demand charge that applies to the noon to 4 period. They both have a demand charge that applies to the 4 to 9 period. The one with the higher demand during the 4 to 9 period is going to pay a higher cost because that demand charge is the highest of the demand charges that they would pay.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Director Salter?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment just about the process we've gone through. The first is I'm finding it difficult that we have this rate hike included in this budget item, and then we have the software also included in this budget item. I understand that we're trying to be efficient and improve things together as a package, but I feel like trying to package everything into one is difficult for me. And I think there might be other board members that maybe might struggle with the software, might struggle with the rate hike, but like the budget, and then feel like this is all one item. So maybe in the future, we can vote on things as separate items before we have to do this, because it's a lot. And I think this is also a very, very long meeting to try to do all of this. So that's just stated for the record. Hopefully we can do something a little different next time. The second is that this demand charge, I'm struggling with the fact that it was never brought to XCOM as its own item. And it was XCOM's in its constitution is supposed to approve or recommend rate hikes to the board. So XCOM really never looked at this issue and it was folded into the budget just like it's being done here, which is just on a process wide is very, very difficult to really dig into it. I asked specific questions about the costs. So we're always talking about here's what the effect on the revenue is going to be of these rate hikes, but the costs are just folded into the overall costs for MCE, and we know those are going up, but it would be nice to see what that, because we know the generation of these customers, what the sort of cost of the electricity is relative to the rate, so we can see what the profit is. And it might be easier for us to approve a rate hike if we can see the revenue against the costs and see that what we're talking about. And that, I know Vicken was working on that. I did ask that earlier, but it's just really hard to approve a rate hike when we don't see the costs for these customers. And the second thing is these customers are our largest customers. These are important customers. They are, large businesses in our communities. And, these are our constituents. And so we're asking for them to pay more. And it would be helpful to us to be able to articulate to them, hey, you need to understand MCE's rates are going here and your usage is here. And this is why we need to do this right now. And again, that information is just absent. And it just makes this very difficult to approve when we don't have that information. The last thing I'd say is all of this communication to the public before the board has had a chance to vote on it also is troublesome for me. And I don't know if the language in the letter says these are our proposed rate hikes subject to the board approving them, because it feels like a lot of this stuff when I was reading through the packet was actually even starting to be disseminated in newspapers in February. or really early on. And so it's like, how are we telling the public that these rate hikes are coming when the board is just looking at this now? So again, I would just really appreciate if we had a better process to approve and understand how communications are sent, because maybe the board really doesn't really want to do these rate hikes, but we've already communicated them to our customers. And that seems awful if we said we're going to do something, then we don't. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Catalina.
Thanks, Don. I was hoping to just jump in here for a moment and appreciate the comment and questions here. I'd like to clarify the process. So yes, there is rate making recommendations that can be done at the XCOM level. It is not a requirement. The actual authority lies with the full board. So MCE staff did bring the demand charges as part of the budget that was discussed in XCOM, and the motion that was recommended to approve included specifically the increase in the demand charges. So it was very clear on the motion that was approved at XCOM for that recommendation. And then separately, to address the noticing of the public, we have noticing requirements from the CPUC and in our implementation plan to make sure that we are being transparent with our customers and affording them an opportunity to comment on our rate increases prior to the board making a decision. So we are actually required to notify the public in advance via newspapers. We had a banner on our website, trying all different avenues in order to get our customers aware of a proposed increase, so that they have the opportunity to attend meetings, and it's on our agendas. So these are all requirements that we have to abide by per our implementation plan that allows us to have these rate-making discussions here. And Dawn, I don't know if you'd like to add anything else to that.
Yeah, thanks, Catalina. The only thing I'd want to add is just to reiterate that we historically, and we have always adopted rate changes and our budget in tandem because they are intermingled. So that is always the way we do it. This year is no different. And the other thing I heard you asking for was a more simple explanation. I know that we appreciate the back and forth that you've had with Vicken over the last week about what demand charges really come from and how they come from resource adequacy. But it's hard to talk to a customer about resource adequacy costs. So one example that we found that seems to resonate a little better when we're talking about rates is an egg example. So everyone's talking about the price of eggs lately all over the place. If you were running a grocery store and you had to buy your carton of eggs for $10, would it be a good idea to sell it to your customer for $8? Probably not. Would it be a good idea to sell it to some customers for $8 and other customers for $12? Probably not. So what we're looking to do here is make sure that some customers aren't inadvertently subsidizing the ones who are paying under market. Because right now when we go out and buy resource adequacy to cover demand charges, we're paying more than what we're charging customers. So we're the grocery store charging $8 for a $10 carton of eggs. That's not where we want to be.
Yeah, and thank you for the clarification. So that all makes sense to me. The part on we know the usage of these customers, and just seeing that more transparently, like here's how much these customers generate in those costs during peak demand periods, and being able to just quantify that and having some data there would be helpful, because I agree with your egg analogy. We just don't have the data to look at it. We're just seeing here, charge this rate. And also remember, these are our largest customers, and sometimes large customers get scale because they're so scaled, get some sort of discount because they're buying so much. So again, we just don't have that side of the equation, and it's just helpful data for us to be able to approve the rate hike. We all know that the charges have gone up. It's just actually seeing that for this subset of customers and seeing that, yes, actually they're being subsidized by the rest would help. We just have that out there and not just in the slide deck.
Okay, and I think that might be a point that we might disagree on. We've been talking quite a bit about resource adequacy costs ad nauseum. It was a big part of our board retreat last fall, and we've sent quite a bit of information about that. Happy to resend it, but I feel like we've actually spent a lot of time on that particular issue, but happy to put it on the agenda for future meetings as well. And Chair, I don't think we have any other questions here in San Rafael. Oh, we
Okay.
have one more. One more, sorry.
Okay.
So I guess I struggle with this because I think that, to a certain extent, you might be able to, some of our customers might be able to achieve efficiencies as you've got up on the slide, but realistically, a lot of these larger customers, even if I understand demand pricing and I understand the concept and trying to adjust behavior, according to pricing, but realistically, I mean, how do you think a grocery store might be able to turn off the air conditioning or the freezer to adjust their demand based on demand pricing? I just find it in practice could be challenging. And so what's going to happen is they will accept the demand pricing and then pass along the costs to the consumer, which is everyone else. So I struggle with the concept of demand pricing. I'm a big proponent of market pricing and having market pricing drive behavior. But I think in this case, the actual efficiencies are limited. You're not going to get there's a certain limit to the amount of efficiencies that these customers are going to be able to achieve, just given the demand pricing. And so the rest of the time, they're just going to pass through the costs to the end user. So that I struggle with when I'm looking at increasing demand costs. But secondly, Don and I had a separate conversation about this, about where our largest customers are potentially being subsidized by everybody else. And that does seem inequitable to me. So is one potential solution here is if we increase the demand pricing for this segment of customers, are we able to reduce demand costs for everybody else?
This is Vic and Kasarjan. I just appreciate the discussion. Just in something similar to what I shared with Director Salzer, as we had shared with the board in XCOM and TechCom previously, the cost of summer peak RA is $90. We are trying to make the peak summer usage demand charge around $20. So to recover the peak summer cost, we need a five-fold increase almost. We're not saying that. It is a minuscule increase in adjustment of the demand charge that can be absorbed by these customers that are enjoying 25% less costly demand charge with MCE than they would with PG&E. To be honest, honestly, I wonder if those savings are being passed to the customers now, or is it being driven by market forces on the price of a commodity? I wonder. So it's a very tiny financial adjustment on the overall scheme of things to significantly reduce subsidies that is occurring at a time where we are not raising energy costs, but we want to make sure that we are raising adequate awareness in the cost of resource adequacy at the times like we had shared with you in public documents that it had hit $90. So we do need to reduce that. And if you look at the customers' distribution, the winter rates are around $4. And we have like $1.30, $2.30, whatever it costs as well. So we will look into these, and Director Seltzer and I discussed about the hourly component of the demand and how we are going to adjust our portfolio to make sure that our resource adequacy demand charges actually are not, competing against our energy charges. We're creating a behavior change opportunity to reduce energy costs at the peakest summer prices. So I just wanted to provide that to the board for consideration. Thank you.
And if I could just jump in as well, I just wanted to clarify those success stories that we showed on the screen. Those are not load shifting projects. Those are energy efficiency projects where we did real upgrades at customers' facilities to reduce their overall energy consumption, which then, reduces it at all times, including during their peak consumption hours. And these large customers can sometimes have very lucrative projects, and we have more money available for these types of projects. So I just wanted to underscore that we really have a lot of opportunity to work with these customers to bring down their demand charges, not just through load shifting, but also just through energy efficiency.
I think Alice is saying send any customers her way if you have any demand charge customers in your communities.
Yeah, great.
Please do.
And then one last question for General Counsel, if possible. So I understand what you said about, advance noticing of increasing rates, but I honestly was a little surprised to hear that a letter had gone out prior to the board approving the rate increase. And so could you explain, could you have held off from sending out the letter until the board had actually approved the rates, or it feels like it was preemptive?
Yeah, no, I understand, and it seems counterintuitive. However, per our implementation plan, we're required to give advance notice so that customers can come to a board meeting and comment and provide feedback directly to the agency. It's all listed as proposed, and that we propose to have these adjustments take place on April 1st. And that is all pending your board's approval of those rates. But we're required to give that notice 31 days in advance of you all making that decision. So that's why we started the process very early in February so that customers could be getting the notices. There's an on-bill notice requirement. There's the website requirement. We post it publicly via our website with board packets. So there are various ways where we're obligated to make sure that our customers have notice in advance of you all making a decision. And then if your board doesn't approve it, then that's something that we can adjust on the website, and there's no impact to the customers directly. But they do, per the implementation plan that we file with the CPUC, we are required to make those notices before you all make a decision, and it's listed as a proposed adjustment.
In one note, one note of clarity, it mentions that it's a proposed change, and it also invites the customers to this very meeting and provides a link to our meetings and our meeting notes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We do not have any public comment here in San Rafael or online. Thank you.
Okay. We will bring this back one more time to my fellow board members. Any lasting comments?
Vice Chair, we do have one more part of the presentation
okay.
To continue along. I know this is part 3, item 6B, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, this is Vicken again, talking about the transmission software solutions. So we're talking about Little Bear Solar Project in Southern California near Fresno. Total capacity 160 megawatts, solar only. At this time, you have the energy generation capability about 450 gigawatt hours. And the contract started in 2020. We have till 2040 to go to. Next slide, please. So we will be using some definitions. So RAS, it's a remedial action scheme. This is the software portion that we're talking about. There's a quote-unquote transmission megawatt additions to the Little Bear project. WEC is the Western Electricity Coordinating Council. It's the regulatory entity that rules Western United States, west of Mississippi, all the way to Canada and down to Baja, Mexico. NERC, North American Electric Reliability Corporation, rules the compliance reliability matters for all of Canada, all of United States, and Baja, Mexico. RC West is actually California ISO's a portion of California ISO. It's the Reliability Coordinator West that basically provides reliability coordination over all balancing authorities, most of balancing authorities in Western United States. Next slide, please. So this is the single line diagram of the area that Little Bear sits in the Fresno area. If you can tell, there are some red cylindrical or rectangular portions that show close to 90 some odd percent to over 100% overloads going on in the Little Bear injection points into that portion of the grid. And those are the areas that we are working with California ISO and PG&E for about 3 years now to install measurement devices, real-time measurement devices that measure flow of electricity from Little Bear project to the PG&E grid to inform PG&E and ISO about how much the weakest portion of their grid is being loaded so that they do not curtail Little Bear project. Next slide, please. This is basically a simple diagram, that the bar chart that shows that how much it has been costing us over the past 4 years or so on the curtailments. Please note, it's been getting worse and worse every year. But last year it was the worst, at about almost $20 million in cost for the actual curtailments. And please note the note within the box says these curtailments have cost MCE 42, but it's actually when the actual costs are even higher due to negative pricing charge in California ISO market. So usually when the sun is up and we have a lot of solar being generated across mostly Central California, there is not enough load to carry this excess generation, and California ISO drops the cost of renewable solar generation to the negative territory to entice buyers to buy that power, and ISO pays them. It's a little bit counterintuitive market conditions, but that are our losses that we are getting, and it's getting higher. Next slide, please. So over the past several years, we've been working with PG&E and ISO to resolve our Little Bear curtailment issue. After discussion with California ISO, they instructed the PG&E to upgrade the conductors at the Mendota area to improve our transfer capability and reduce congestion. That was about $50 million. I'm very sorry to say that other than a couple months, it didn't help. It went back into congestion area. This is really like a spaghetti of transmission lines. It requires billions of dollars of improvements to improve the flow capabilities between Southern California and Northern California. We also looked at internally adding batteries, and the lack of transmission availability at that site does not allow us to have resource adequacy out of those batteries. As we just talked about it in the demand charge rates, resource adequacy value is so high that it can easily justify or actually not justify a project, because the market conditions for energy alone, the arbitrage opportunities are not large enough to do that. So we could not move forward with that as well. So over the past year and a half or so, we've been working with the California ISO and PG&E to find a simple software solution that, with these installation of these sensors and flow measurement devices, to eliminate or significantly reduce the curtailments at Little Bear project. Next slide, please. Okay, so the RAS project, it will take, once we have a contract in place with PG&E, we are at the very beginning levels of having the first draft contract within a week, hopefully. It's between 2 years to 3 years. I wish I could give you a much faster timeline, because we're losing a lot of money every year. And then we need to go to the California ISO's RC West, and then to WECC, and then to NERC to get the project approved for compliance purposes. The total estimated cost we're assuming at $10 million, and we're assuming another $250,000 a year for compliance contracts that we need to monitor for these equipment's measurement devices. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so do I pass?
Deacon, you passed.
Maida.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
if you can go back this slide, and now we're open for questions.
Okay, yeah, sorry
The
about that.
transmission upgrade.
If anybody has questions, gladly take it.
Yes, Director Sandu.
Could you clarify that the 10 million, is that to pay Casio?
PG&E.
We're going to pay PG&E 10 million?
That is to pay for and own the equipment that make up this transmission availability through a software system.
We're going to have PG&E make the software?
No, we are buying all the equipment that needs to be installed at PG&E control room and at Little Bear generation facility, so through via super high data conductor equipment to measure by the second the generation level and the loading of the line, so that whenever the loading of the line comes really close to PG&E's operating limits, we interrupt the power plant so that PG&E's system is protected but in the meantime, we get our power out instead of being curtailed on minimum transfer capability basis.
Is the equipment made by or owned by PG&E?
No, it's market equipment.
Got it. But we're buying it from PG&E.
Well, PG&E is the owner of the facilities, of the substation, of the transmission line, of the whole system is owned by PG&E in that area.
Yes.
So no one can get on their land or into their control room. It's only PG&E. Even California ISO has no rights.
Got it.
So we need to, and they are not interested to do this fix by themselves. So they're like, basically, if you want to pay us to add these equipments to protect yourself while protecting PG&E's own transmission lines, they seem to be inclined to do it.
So we're paying them to buy it from someone else? Or,
Yes.
I'm not under, okay.
It needs to be bought, it needs to be installed, and it needs to be maintained, and it needs to be supervised for compliance.
Understood.
Yes.
My only question, is there a possibility to lease the equipment instead of having them buy it? Is there a equipment lease potential?
I'm not sure if PG&E may be interested with that, and it has pluses and minuses, because our intent so far has been, we want to pay for it, and we want to own the megawatts that this remedial action scheme is creating. So it's going to be our ownership with through the cooperation of California ISO and PG&E. So I would like to have the path of least resistance to get these losses taken away as soon as possible.
Yes.
$10 million investment to get rid of $20 million in losses, ideally 6 months return in investment. So I'm like, I wish we could reduce that 24 months to 36-month timeline.
Thank you.
I hope I answered.
Yeah, thank you. I just was trying to figure out who was getting the 10 million for what. And
We
it's,
will need
that's
to
all.
pay PG&E and probably Long Road, the company that owns Little Bear, to allow us to have these equipment installed at their facilities for our benefit.
And this equipment, they'll be in charge of procuring, not us.
Yes.
Got it. Could you maybe describe how the quote came about by any chance?
By PG&E.
They quoted it. Do you know, did they put a markup on that cost, or is that?
I have no idea. It's a ballpark figure.
Yeah.
It's not minutia. At this time, we don't have like line item by line item
Sure.
equipment. It's a very high level of study that we had to pay for PG&E to do and tell us the estimate.
The only concern I have, I've done a little bit of, like, for example, business with the federal government, for example, right? And at
I'm
times,
sorry to hear that.
at times you have the company that owns the contract.
Mhm.
The company that owns the contract will then add a 30% surcharge because they own the contract, and you'll never get the contract because, well, God knows why. But
Yeah.
there's companies out there that make a bunch of money because they own the federal contract and they'll subcontract out. I guess my only concern is what's PG&E's markup on that they're charging us to get this equipment? And that's why I'm asking, like, can we just buy it directly and have them install it, I suppose? Or
Those are really great questions. I do not know. I'm not exposed to that yet. In past life, PG&E tells you how much something is cost, how much it's going to take, their personnel time, their truck time, they have that whole list, and there's quite a bit of information that is published by the PUC as far as what it costs PG&E to do something. On the lease side, I really don't know. If we were dealing with LADWP, they only own everything. They own the land, the tower, the conductor. They don't lease or rent anything.
Yeah.
I don't know with PG&E.
Are you looking for approval today on the 10 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Because in the contract, when PG&E offers, they usually they payment. They want payment for them to start procuring and putting people to work and start things going. We need to start that clock on the 24-month to 36-month as soon as possible to, like I said, to reduce or eliminate our losses.
Yeah, I understand that part. I'm just a little, I guess, concerned about this figure that they gave us that we can't really, I guess, audit, essentially. I just don't want us to be paying a surcharge, I guess, on top of, like, for example, them trying to make a profit on it because they're a for-profit company, I think, right, or no?
They are.
Yeah, and we're not. So that's my concern, is I don't trust that it's a completely at par figure, maybe.
I completely appreciate your concern. I just do not know. We will be exposed to. We will let the board and the committees know what we find out. But at this time, our priority is to get the project going. But we do not know yet all those details.
Okay, next we'll go to Director Veros, and then after that, the City of Napa.
Thanks for sharing the information. And so if we approve it, 10 million, right, today, what is the timeline we are going to look at this to be completed? Because this sounds pretty exciting, especially improving our efficiency, reducing the cost, right? This is definitely a hot item for me at this point. So do we have some timeline? Because we already lost, looks like 3 years.
Yeah.
This one?
Really, that is the pain point, like I mentioned a couple times. 24 months to 36 months is PG&E's timeline, which we will do our best to expedite it. ISO has been extremely cooperative. PG&E staff, about 8 of them, has been working with us. So that is getting the whole RAS system to be implemented. But then there's the regulatory process as well to make sure that the grid is heavy on compliance. That goes, like I said, from the WEC RC, the RC West to WEC and then to NERC. We just need to make sure that our compliance documentations are in place. So long story short, we're going to move as fast as we can. Hopefully within 24 months, we'll have this RAS implemented and operational.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, 2 years. If we are very lucky.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's a very good move to get it done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, City of Napa.
Yes, hi. Thanks for the information. And I think what you're looking for tonight is the authorization to move forward with that $10 million amount. I would just add to the comments that were made to say, as you move through this process, if there is any opportunity to look at leverage with PG&E, whether it's through lease or through asking them to pay for a portion, I think we really ought to take a close look at that. And secondly, I don't know the facility, but if there are any other CCAs or anybody else who is benefiting from this work, that we make sure that any of those potential parties who are benefiting could also be paying into this. So I understand the need to move quickly and the need to move tonight, but I just don't want to lose sight of others who could be benefiting that may be able to help with a cost share. So that's really more of a comment than a question. And otherwise, I'm supportive of moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Marin. Any questions over there?
Director Wilkinson?
Thank you. Vikin, my understanding is that PG&E has these remedial action schemes on a number of their lines already. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you know my quick read of it was that there'd been mixed reviews as to the success of these remedial action schemes. Is that correct?
No.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, mixed reviews. I'm sorry, Director Wilkinson.
In that they hadn't being able to balance the grid in a really significant way, and they were bringing in a lot more machine learning to try and optimize. Or am I just, is that not correct?
I would, maybe we need to talk more about it, but these remedial action schemes are highly regulatorily compliant items by FERC, WEC, and RC West. If something does, if any RAS does not operate, will be taken out.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense. And so where PG&E does install these on their lines, they tend to do that where they have all the generation capability, and they're just not interested in doing it for lines where they have less generation. Is that correct? Why aren't they doing it here if they do it elsewhere? Why are we having to pay for it?
The area does not, it basically lacks any PG&E resources. And on top of that, the grid down there is very, like on the tertiary level for California ISO to show any interest for, to build out. The need for grid build out is further north of that area to improve the transfer capability between Southern California Edison and PG&E. And that's in the billions of dollars. That's very large return on investment for PG&E. So that's where a lot of the concentration is going. So, but as far as remedial action schemes that PG&E has, they have some very large systems that impacts hundreds of megawatts in Northern California.
Okay, that makes sense. And the question that was just asked there, I'd love to have answered, which is, within this Little Bear project, are there other CCAs or whoever that will benefit from this remedial action scheme? And if so, how do we plan to share the costs with them?
The sharing of benefits will be through California ISO markets. The California ISO has transmission owners. They take those megawatts from the transmission owners and they put it in a California ISO FERC-approved market where entities, only scheduling coordinators, can compete with each other through their bidding protocols as they're putting schedules to the ISO. So it's a market that competes itself. It has nothing to do with the other entities that may be nearby us, but by us installing this RAS scheme and taking ownership interest of those megawatts, we are triggering the solution for our own power plant against curtailments.
That went completely over my head. But what you're saying is you're trying to prevent curtailment, and that curtailment that you're trying to prevent will only benefit us. It's not benefiting others who are trying to pull from this Little Bear project.
Yeah, a slight adjustment maybe. I'm sorry if I'm not being very clear enough. So
it's
in
complicated.
the market, sorry, Director Wilkinson. So in the market, when someone brings in megawatts, the California ISO market creates competition. So we cannot say that this segment is only going to benefit us, but we are the primary generator right there. So we have a lot to benefit from these megawatts. So,
so there are others that share this project. You're just saying we're the primary beneficiary of this project.
Absolutely. Yes.
So there will be other minor beneficiaries, but the bulk is on us.
Could be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Director Salter?
So I know it's so late, so I'm sorry for talking, but I want to understand this just in the scheme. I think it'd be helpful because we have a lot of new board members. So my understanding was Little Bear, we have a 20-year power purchase agreement, and that sort of helped build this solar farm. Is that correct, Vicken?
Yeah, we did the contract in, I think, 2016 or 2017 for it to come online in 2020. So we did a power purchase agreement at that time, but since then, that local grid, if I'm understanding where you're trying to go.
No, yeah, I
Director,
just want to break it down so everyone gets like, so basically we as an agency can enter into these very long-term contracts. And so we say, yes, we want this energy. And then that provides that contract provides the financing basically for these owners and people to come in to build the solar farm.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So this little, even though we don't own it, it's sort of like we signed this long-term agreement and these, capital came together, built the solar farm, and effectively it's our energy, but we don't own it. The contract supports all of that. And then when they put this solar plant online, they put it in a bad area where the distribution of getting the electricity out is a problem. And so it keeps getting curtailed. Am I explaining that right, Vicken?
Close enough. It's more solar generation came into the area, and PG&E did not add transmission into the area, so the curtailments started increasing. That's why our cost in that, like you saw in the bar chart, it increased from about 4 or 5 million to about 20 million in the last 4 years. But in the state of California,
sorry, Vicken. So just to be clear, it's the distribution infrastructure, not the solar farm's fine. It's getting the electricity out to the grid is a problem. And so they keep on curtailing it. The agency in charge, CAISO, who is saying, no, we're turning off that plant and it's ours effectively because we're getting a lot of that energy. And then we have to go rebuy that energy out in the market. So I'm sorry for just saying this. I think I just want to be helpful in sort of piecing together the problem. So what my question is, when we're now looking at future PPAs, are we sort of also looking at where these plants are being put to make sure they're near good distribution infrastructure so this doesn't happen again?
Yeah. The short answer is yes, and Vidi may elaborate on that. But for a couple of years now, 3 years now, we approach things PPA arrangements with firm deliverability capability to get all the resource adequacy out, and with firm energy and capacity. And yes, we do that. We have been doing that for several years now.
Okay, great. So you don't anticipate this happen? I mean, there's nothing we can do when the distribution isn't built. I'm sure we're not alone in this problem, but obviously it's a good learning lesson. And I also just wanted to commend you for coming up with the software solution. So very innovative. And I think we all, it's such an unfortunate situation that we secured this great power resource and can't use it. Yeah. So thank you for coming up with a creative solution. Sorry for the diversion. I just was hoping it added some clarity to people.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, any other questions from Marin?
I see no additional hands.
Okay. Do we have any comments from members of the public?
None here in San Rafael, none online.
Okay. Any further discussion on this item from
I have one,
my fellow
Chair.
board members? Yes, Director Sandhu.
Could you clarify the 10 million? Is that a software cost or a hardware cost?
That's software, hardware, personnel, installation,
And is
everything.
Is there an ongoing cost to that, or is this a one-time cost?
That is the one-time cost.
What's the ongoing cost of this?
At this time, we have put in there the ongoing cost about $250 about compliance-related contracts that we need to have in place.
Sure.
But we don't have enough to know what it will be the ongoing cost. It will be
Has
significant.
PG&E already done an RFP or an RFI or something on this that we've seen quotes on, or?
No. It's their project, if they accept it. I mean, they're a massive company. This is noise to them.
I get that.
Yeah.
I'm saying for us. it's a
So,
little
yeah,
different.
no, we are going to PG&E for PG&E to design and implement the rest.
And they're the only option?
It's their land, their equipment, their home, their building. No one else can touch it.
I was just going to say, you obviously have never negotiated with PG&E.
No, I have not.
There is
Oh.
one way to do things in the world, and that is PG&E's way. And there are things you can do to bend them to your will, but those are those are difficult things. In Southern California, it is, but up here it's PG&E.
I guess I'll just.
Thank you, Director Darling, for saying that.
I
Appreciate
will
that.
tell you stories sometime.
Sure. Has the board approved something like this before? Or is it the first time we're doing this?
This is the first time for remedial action scheme?
Yes.
Yes. In any CCA. First time.
Okay. I guess I'm just gonna make one comment, I guess, for the record, I suppose, is in the future, I would like to know, I guess, more before approving 10 million for God
Okay.
knows what, I guess.
Yeah.
That's all I'm doing, that's all.
That's understandable. Let me just clarify. This is to draw 10 million from our reserves to pay for this
Yeah.
when the opportunity comes. It's not that we know the whole thing about it. We know the design, but we need to continue working with PG&E and California ISO to get it done. This is so that there is no excuse for them to say, we're not going to do it.
Do we have any protection on them coming back to us to say 10 million's not enough? Or is it 10 million hard cap? Or are they gonna be like, hey, we need more
That
money
10
now?
million includes everything in our thinking, what it would take to get this thing done.
How likely is it that they'll go over budget on the design or the creation of this?
Well, in a recorded board meeting that anybody can listen, I don't think they will.
Because when a small company does business with a huge company, especially in many other industries, they always go over. And I guess the second concern would be if we approve 10 million and they say in a year or however long it takes for this project that, oh, we need 5 more million to complete it, and then we're on the hook for 5 more because we have no choice now. So can we add a clause that you only have 10 million, like a cap of some sort, or are we not allowed to do that?
Well, that's what the recommended motion is. Can't go over it unless we come back to the board to do more with any justification that it would be up to the board to approve or deny.
Is there a historical project where they have done this on budget? Or is it the first time they're doing this with the?
Not with we don't have any such thing with PG&E.
Okay.
I think it's important to remember too, this is to reduce our losses. So we need to get it in motion, so it just the conversations need to get started so they can get started on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll continue with Maida. Go ahead.
Thank you. So moving on to our recommendations. On the screen, we have the MCE committee recommendations from board approval for the proposed fiscal year. We brought it to the executive committee. The proposed adjustment to MCE demand charges from the executive committee, and we brought the full item to the technical committee on March 7. And the MCE investment in transmission software solutions to the technical committee on March 7 as well. Next slide, please. Staff recommendations is that the board approve the proposed fiscal year 2025-26, including the following subcomponents of the budget. The proposed adjustment to MCE demand charges to be effective April 1st, 2025. Continue the MCE CARES credit with an allocation of 5 million. Transferring up to 13 million from the operating reserve fund to the offset unexpected regulatory costs, and transferring of 10,250,000 from MCE reserves for MCE investment in transmission software solution. And also authorizing staff to execute the necessary contracts to implement these solutions up to the amount transferred from MCE reserves.
I'll move that. Barbara Kohler Fairfax.
Second, Holly.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
One quick question. So as Vice Chair, we need to, before we approve the motion, I can ask the question, right? I should be able to ask question, that discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
So I thought you mentioned, as Vice Chair mentioned, that we will bring back the first item to the next meeting?
Yeah.
About we didn't mention that one. Okay. Maybe I missed
We're
it.
doing, all of the presentations kind of culminate in this one recommendation. So they're all showing here on the screen together.
Okay, because the adjustment to demand charges, I thought that we are going to bring it back to the next meeting, but we are not going. Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Motion is Kohler and second is Thier. Belvedere?
No.
Benicia?
Yes.
Danville?
Yes.
El Cerrito?
Yes.
Fairfax?
Yes.
Fairfield?
Yes.
Hercules?
Yes.
Lafayette?
Yes.
Larkspur?
No.
County of Marin?
Yes.
Mill Valley?
Yes.
Moraga?
I have to abstain. I really do not have the background to vote tonight. I apologize.
Thank you. The City of Napa?
Yes.
The County of Napa and 4 Napa cities?
Yes.
Novato?
Yes.
Oakley?
Yes.
Pinal?
Yes.
Pittsburgh?
Yes.
Richmond?
Yes.
Ross?
No.
San Anselmo?
Yes.
San Pablo?
No.
San Rafael?
Yes.
San Ramon?
Yes.
Solano?
Yes.
Tiburon?
Yes.
Vallejo?
Yes.
Walnut Creek?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next, we will go to legislative update discussion, and Stephanie Chen, Director of Legislative Affairs, will be introducing this item. Please go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much, directors, for hanging in with us for this marathon. I will make this as quick as I can. Thank you. So I wanted to start with a little bit on how we engage in our legislative work. First and foremost, we take our direction from MCE's mission and from a board-approved directive to do these 4 things here: support community choice, reduce GHG emissions, promote local economic and workforce benefits, and advocate on behalf of MCE customers. Within this directive, there is also a specific direction to not engage in anything that would impact local permitting authority. So if there is a bill that would have a significant impact for MCE, but it would also impact local permitting authority, we will come to your board for a discussion and to seek specific guidance on whether and how to engage. And within this guidance, I know one of the things that you all have been talking about during the budget conversation is the impact of the expansion of regulatory authority or scope creep over MCE and the way that it impacts our business model and our compliance obligations. And so one of the things that we are laser focused on is making sure that we are pushing back on that wherever we see the specter of that scope creep looming. And we do this work in collaboration wherever possible. And, I in particular want to give a shout out to our staff, both on the policy team, as well as our subject matter experts all across the agency for providing us with that expert guidance on how pending legislation might impact MCE. And I know that earlier there was a conversation about CalCCA as well, and we do a lot of work in this field in tandem with CalCCA, in particular where there are issues like the PCIA, for example, that impact all CCAs or the community choice model as a whole. Next slide, please.
So this is MCE's 10-member California delegation. We'll get to federal a little bit later in the presentation, but we do the bulk of our work here in California. These are our 10 members, and the folks that are marked here with asterisks are new members this year. And all 3 of those new members have experience with CCAs from their time in local government. Either they were sitting in council or board seats when their community joined a CCA, or in the case of Senator Jesse Araguin, he actually was on the board of directors of Ava Community Energy, which is our neighbor here in Alameda County. I don't know whether Alameda County is in that direction or not. Similarly, a couple of years ago, thank you, Director Darling. A couple of years ago, Damon Connolly was elected to the assembly, and he previously served as one of MCE's founding board members and was a board chair of ours for several years as well. I also want to call out here that within our delegation, we have the Senate President Pro Tem Mike McGuire and the Assembly Majority Leader Cecilia Aguiar Curry, both of whom have been really fantastic champions for MCE over the years. Next slide, please.
You want to go back?
Sure.
So Chris,
Cabaldo?
yeah, whatever.
Yes.
He's in Contra Costa also, and so is Lori Wilson.
Yes. Thank you for that call out. I was trying to minimize the number of words on the slide, but yes, appreciate that. Appreciate that. So in California, energy and climate action are always hot topics. And over MCE's lifetime, we've really seen that grow. I have been at MCE for about 5 years. When I started, our list was maybe 30 or 40 bills. And over the last few years, we really have been tracking more than 100 bills every year. And this year, both for MCE, but very much for the legislature and the governor, affordability is a #1 priority. And that includes not only electricity, but also issues like housing, insurance, and gasoline. And what I do want to call out, because we have been having a conversation about MCE's rates in particular, is that while the cost of energy is quite high, the biggest drivers of rate increases today are happening on the transmission and distribution side, the poles and wires, PG&E part of the bill. And those are coming in particular around the cost of wildfire mitigation work as we try to adapt to the impacts of climate change. Later on in the presentation, we'll also talk about some other key themes that we're seeing emerge this year and touch a little bit on the state budget as well. Next slide, please. So we've heard mention of energy efficiency programs as well. And this is really one of our top priorities when it comes to affordability, not just for our programs, but also for the ones that other administrators offer in your communities as well. These programs offer support for every kind of customer, and they help reduce usage. They help shift usage away from that 4 to 9 period, which supports reliability and also helps us reduce curtailment. And they also support electrification, the installation of heat pump water heaters, et cetera. These programs, as Dawn mentioned earlier, are paid for through what's called the public purpose charge, which all customers pay. And the programs currently, for all of the energy efficiency programs statewide, amount to about 1.5% of the revenues collected from customers. But every dollar that is spent on energy efficiency in California saves our customers from having to spend roughly $3 in other energy costs, electricity, gasoline-related costs. So we're really getting a solid bang for our buck when it comes to this investment. And on the micro scale, as Alice mentioned in the conversation about demand charges, but as applies to really all of our customers, energy efficiency is one of the best tools that individual customers have to reduce their usage, reduce their bills, and reduce their carbon footprint all at the same time. And I just want to be clear too, no bills have been introduced yet to date that would threaten ongoing funding for energy efficiency. But the reason we're prioritizing it is because some voices have been arguing that these funds should be cut as a strategy to save money and reduce rates. And we could go into the irony of doing that, but I will avoid that for the moment and just say that we are trying to get out there and be proactive and tell the good story of the benefits that energy efficiency is delivering in our customers, for employees and businesses in our communities, and for the state of California as a whole. Our goal here is to ensure that legislators know that cutting energy efficiency programs would really do more harm than good. So earlier this month, our board team circulated a sign-on letter that MCE and some of our allies have drafted to help tell that story. And I want to offer a big thank you to the communities who have signed on so far. If you haven't signed on yet, but you're interested, you have not missed your window, and we will recirculate that letter and the sign-on opportunity after this meeting. Next slide, please. So other affordability strategies that have been kicking around in the Capitol and that we're very interested in are, as we mentioned, some of the biggest cost drivers are happening on the transmission and distribution side. And within that conversation, there are conversations about how to reduce the cost of the infrastructure, but also how to reduce the financing costs and IOU profits that are associated with those projects. Within this, MCE is particularly excited about a proposal that would pilot the opportunity to use public financing rather than the traditional IOU financing model to build new transmission lines. And just to give you a sense of the scope here, between now and 2045, California is estimated to need to spend between $45 and $63 billion on new transmission lines. So helping to reduce the cost of financing for these projects could cut tens of billions of dollars during that time horizon for our customers. And that's customers statewide, not just MCE's customers. Another key theme here is around better accountability and transparency regarding IOU rate increases. And this is both more scrutiny by the PUC on their rate increase applications, but then also some more accountability on the back end once a rate increase is improved in terms of how they're spending those funds. Permitting reforms is always a significant topic, or has been for the last few years, and we see these proposals popping up in a few different areas that are listed there. Some of them are looking to streamline state processes. Others are looking to create state alternatives to local permitting processes. And as noted earlier, we don't take any positions on anything that would impact local permitting authority, but we are tracking all of those measures. So if you come across them and you have a question about how they might impact MCE, absolutely give us a call. We'd be happy to chat through some of that. But again, we're not going to take any positions on those. And then last, again, as there have been in years past, there is a suite of bills that's looking at various protections for low-income and vulnerable customers, in particular, who are at risk of disconnection. Next slide, please. So one proposal that we wanted to take a slight dive into now, as perhaps a teaser for a forthcoming discussion, wanted to talk about regional markets. Regional markets is an idea that MCE has supported for many years now because it's going to be a way to reduce the cost of achieving our clean energy goals. And when this idea has been introduced in the past, the proposals were a lot more expansive and they had a lot more unknowns in them. This year, it's coming back with a much more narrowly focused proposal, and it is built on a working group, essentially, that has been known as the Pathways Initiative. And this has been the collaborative work of multiple Western states over the last almost 2 years now, including regulatory leaders like leadership at the Public Utilities Commission here in California, as well as the California Energy Commission, and their counterparts and other stakeholders from other Western states. This bill and the pathways proposal that's on the table this year would allow California to participate in independently governed multi-state energy markets. Those markets that Vicken mentioned earlier, that is the function that this initiative is looking at. And the most recent study on the Pathways Initiative and on regional markets found that California as a whole will save as much as $790 million per year in electricity costs, primarily through more efficient dispatch of renewable power and also reduced curtailment, because there will be some place for all of that power to go rather than having to curtail it when demand in California is not terribly high. A regional market will also support reliability by giving California access to 25 gigawatts of emergency supply that we can buy from neighboring states. And just to give some context, that's about 10 times as much power as the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant produces. So that will provide us some significant insurance policy, we can call it, during an extreme heat event. And then finally, a regional market will lower California carbon emissions because we will be able to call on renewable resources before we call on those fossil gas plants. The study that has been referenced here estimated that pathways will reduce fossil generation in California by more than 30%. And that is going to help reduce greenhouse gases, but it's also going to help reduce criteria pollutants and health impacts in the communities that are living near those power plants. So because this is a pretty complicated issue, we are planning a deeper dive on this issue at our May XCOM meeting. And I would encourage anybody who is interested in learning more to join that conversation or to reach out if you have questions. Next slide, please. So a few other energy themes that are coming up. We're seeing a lot of bills again this year that offer different kinds of support for specific renewable and clean energy technologies. We're also seeing a suite of bills on electrification applying both to buildings and vehicles. And some of these are in support of electrification and some of them are not. And then last, I want to flag that the conversation around cap and trade reauthorization is starting to happen. And there are some good ideas that are emerging around how those auction revenues could be used to support affordability through a number of different strategic options. And when the question came up earlier about that climate credit, that twice-a-year credit that shows up on bills, this is the revenue source for that climate credit. It's coming from proceeds from the greenhouse gas auctions that are under the cap and trade system. So this will be a hot topic this year as well as into next year. Next slide, please. So thus far, MCE has taken support positions on 4 bills that will help us advance our priorities and reduce costs for customers. The first is SB 540, which is the bill for the Regional Markets/Pathways Initiative that we talked about a couple of slides ago. SB 330 is the bill about public financing for transmission projects. SB 302 is a bill that would ensure that renewable projects here in California don't get taxed by the state on any amount of money that they receive from the IRA's renewable tax credits, should those continue to exist. This bill essentially ensures that the full value of those tax credits can flow through to customers. And then finally, AB 443 would require the CEC to study how much green hydrogen could be created by powering electrolyzers with resources that are currently being curtailed. So again, another option for what to do with power that is currently, frankly, going to waste. Next slide, please. So the state budget, just to give a timeline here, and folks have mentioned the January draft as well as the May revise. The governor's January draft budget, and this is for state fiscal year, which starts July 1. So all of this conversation is looking ahead to July through the following June. In January, when the governor revealed his draft budget, it projected a modest surplus of around $17 billion. But as noted, this draft budget came out on January 10th, which was like 3 days into the Palisades and Eaton fires and 11 days before the slew of executive orders that came out the day after inauguration. So I think even at that point, the governor was cautioning that we can expect to see perhaps even more in terms of a variance from January to May as a result of those factors in particular. And I want to note too here that in recent years, we've also seen a lot of policy making done through the budget, which is not how it's supposed to work. But I'm seeing some nods in the room that this is a familiar tune. For example, in the energy space, a couple of years ago, the governor proposed a state buyer for renewable energy through like a couple of paragraphs in a budget document. So like these are major changes that are being proposed through a very non-traditional process for that kind of policy. And the budget goes through a very different approval process than policy bills do. In many ways, it's a lot less transparent, it's a lot less participatory, and it can happen really fast. So I think this is what makes it all the more important for us as MCE, but as CCAs as well, to be active in Sacramento and to have contract lobbyists who are active on our behalf as well, so that if something does happen, we are able to turn on a dime and respond as we need to protect our agencies and our business model. Next slide, please. So, as you can imagine, our federal engagement strategy has changed quite a bit this year. We are focusing on, do you see some familiar folks there? We are focusing on supporting the existing tax credits for renewable projects and also that direct pay mechanism that will allow tax-exempt entities like public agencies to benefit directly from those tax credits as well. We are also working to support the rebates and incentives that go directly to customers for things like heat pumps, solar and storage, and electric vehicles. We're also supporting the existing federal tax exemption for municipal bonds. This is something that you're all probably familiar with from your council and board roles. As a public agency, MCE is actually able to use the same kind of bond to prepay our contracts for renewable energy, which can reduce the total cost of those contracts by around 10% or more. So there's a group of California CCAs that have been active in this space for a few years now, and to date, that group of CCAs, which includes MCE, have issued $16 billion worth of prepay bonds, which are saving customers of those participating CCAs around $84 million a year. And if the tax exemption were to be pulled through the reconciliation process, we anticipate that savings amount could potentially be halved. So it would be a real loss when it comes to affordability. And as you've talked about, MCE has received federal earmarks over the last few years, and we are now in the implementation phase of those. We are actually putting a pause on pursuing additional federal earmarks at this time, which potentially surprises no one, but in part so that we can focus on implementation of those existing grants and make sure we really can deliver for our communities and for the representatives who helped us secure those funds, but also because there's a lot less alignment now between what MCE is doing and what both Congress and the White House are doing. We will, of course, be ready to jump back in the pool if the opportunity arises, but for now we are putting a pause on seeking additional funding. Thank you, yes, Director Darling. I live in that hope. Next slide, please. So there are a few opportunities if you would like to get more involved in this work, either individually or on behalf of your community. If your community has a legislative platform that you adopt either annually or on a regular cadence, we do have some language that supports MCE and community choice that you could consider adding to your platform the next time it gets a refresh and goes up for adoption. We also have, as mentioned, that sign-on letter supporting energy efficiency. And last, we often invite board members to join us when we meet, in particular with state legislators, so that you can share your perspective on what it's like to be part of MCE, why your community chose to join MCE, and really sort of deepen the story around the community connection between CCAs and your communities. So if you would like to be on our short list for meetings like this, we're not going to bug everybody about it, but if you would like to be on our short list and get involved in those meetings, I would love to have a quick conversation just to know a little bit more about when and how you might like to get plugged in into those efforts. If you are an incumbent board member and we've already had this conversation, you are still on our short list. Always happy to talk to you at any time, but no need to specifically put yourself back on that short list. But if we haven't connected about this yet, or if you're a new member and you would like to get more involved here, then please do let us know and we can have that conversation. So as my homework assignment, I will follow up with information about each of these 3 opportunities here. And with that, I think happy to take any questions, and thank you so much for your time.
Stephanie, thank you. Any questions here? We'll go to Director Alex Walker-Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and thank you, Director. Not in my head because I'm a lobbyist by trade, so all this stuff is like right up my wheelhouse. Just when thinking about cap and trade, thinking about what they did to Chad Mays brings back a lot of fun memories. But given the situation in Washington with obviously folks who are not aligned with us leading both chambers and the gap in funding that we'll have from the state, what are some of the plans to make sure that things stay, squared away? I'm relatively new to MCE, but making sure that customers aren't facing any sort of issues or we're missing any opportunities. And then also just kind of where has the governor been on this? Because we know he's been taking some different stances and approaches recently as he pursues his presidential ambitions.
Whatever do you mean? Now, when you talk about the gap, are you talking about a gap with respect to MCE specifically and federal funding that we are anticipating, or are you referring to federal funding that is coming to California as a whole that may or may not be?
Yeah, I should have specified a little bit more of the MCE side, but also to the state as a whole, because this wheelhouse is something that I'm totally unfamiliar with.
Sure. So, I can speak to the state portion of things. When CalCCA had a lobby day in January, and when we met with the governor's staff, they were pretty candid with us in saying that, given where the California budget is, if we do lose a significant chunk of federal funding that's, coming for DOE grants or something along those lines, they were level setting very realistically, I think, about the ability of the state to backfill those funds and saying basically don't count on it. I am sure that they are going to do whatever they can, and we do have the climate bond funds from Proposition 4 from the last election that hopefully will help at least staunch any potential bleeding that may come from the change in administration. But I think it's still a bit unknown whether some of the moves that have been talked about in Washington, D.C. are actually going to play out in the long run and how that will happen. So still a lot of uncertainty there, but I think the state at least is taking a very small c conservative approach when it comes to their expectations for that funding. And would invite colleagues to chime in as well. But I think when it comes to the federal funding that MCE is receiving, as Alice mentioned earlier, most of that really is going toward projects rather than staff or any longer term commitments. So if we did end up losing some of those funds, it just means that we wouldn't be able to serve as many customers with the programs that we had intended for it.
Okay, that's what I was kind of wondering what that was going to look like on just sort of the operational side and the day-to-day impact. But thank you, Director. I appreciate it.
And just to add in real quick, the percentage of outside funding that's coming in that's federal is really small. The vast majority of our program funding is coming from the CPUC, from ratepayer funds. So yeah, those projects won't happen without that funding, but it's a really small percentage of our overall program funds.
Okay, we'll go to Maureen. Any questions for Stephanie Chen?
Director Perry?
Hi, good evening. Stephanie, just a question on earmarks. I've heard through the grapevine that there might be some district requests coming back, at least on the assembly side in California. Have you heard that, or is that kind of a rumor? I realize the state budget is going to look very bleak, but I've also heard that possibly district requests are going to be a thing this year.
So we have not heard anything to date about the specific district requests that MCE has successfully secured so far. And I think the uncertainty around future requests and the potential of being able to successfully secure future funds, because that is so uncertain, that's a big part of the reason why we are pausing the pursuit of additional funds. But as of now, we are in conversations with both HUD and the DOE about funds that we have secured in previous years under the previous administration. So knock on wood, light a candle. Hopefully we are okay there.
Great.
I hope
Sorry,
that answered your question.
Sorry, it's late. I was referring to the state legislature. I've heard that the state legislature may do district funds this year. I know they didn't do them last year. Obviously, members have supported requests in funding, but not district requests in kind of the earmark side.
That is a good question. I think it may remain to be seen at this point, but when the governor did issue the draft budget, as well as when the legislature, really got going in January, the caution from leadership as well as from the governor's office was, folks do not plan to spend additional money because there is no more additional money to spend.
Great. And then just one last question. Does Cal CCA have a lobby day? And is that something you want board members to join for? Should folks mark that on their calendar?
So Cal CCA did have a lobby day in January, and we will definitely keep you in the loop if there are future events throughout this session as well as future sessions.
Okay, any other questions in Marin?
I see no raised hands.
Okay, any questions from the public?
I see no raised hands online, Chair.
Okay. Stephanie, as I told you earlier, I was in Washington as Vice President of the League of California Cities. We spoke to FEMA. FEMA is all up in the air. We're not sure if that program is going to continue, and we're very, very concerned about that. So with these the slashing of every department that this new administration is going to do, I have a feeling we're not going to get anything done. And this is what Congressman Garamendi told us. A lot of the things in the federal earmarks that we received, kiss those goodbye, because they're not supporting any of that. Department of Energy, who we spoke to the last couple of years, they're concentrating on big oil, and that's it. So as a member of the Air Board, we're looking closely at this, and we're going to continue with our plans for the future to get to 2045 faster. But that's not going to include the federal government helping us in the next 4 years. They don't like offshore wind. I did speak to Congressman Friedman in Los Angeles, and she had a little miniature offshore wind thing on her display, and she is very disappointed with the Department of Energy. They're not supporting any of those projects. So, thank you for that, and look forward to having you fly out to Washington and meet with our leaders there. Next is board and staff matters. Anything? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Director Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, this is going to be very embarrassing for Stephanie, but I have to. First of all, if those who don't know, Stephanie is one of the most well-respected beings in Sacramento. And so it is so important that we recognize how amazing she is. And I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I am in the full spirit of giving people their flowers right now in my life, and I have to give you your flowers because it is always tremendous how when I go to Sacramento and anytime I talk about energy, Stephanie's name is being brought up, not just in Northern California. I have many friends in Southern California. I went to UCLA. People love her, and people, more importantly, don't just love her, they respect her, which is very important. And we just have such a beautiful asset on this team of MCE, and I just wanted to take that moment to say that. I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to say that. I know that's embarrassing, but you deserve it. So I'm just going to lean into it. I do want to also, as technical committee chair, also welcome Director Stephanie Andre to the committee. I wanted to encourage, given that Dawn's in her CEO report did mention we are looking for more folks. It's very interesting. When I've been on this board for 5 years and been technical committee chair for 4 of those 5 years. And when we had meetings at 8 a.m., there was more people on that committee. So I'm like, maybe moving it later did not actually help. Maybe we need another 8 a.m. meeting on Friday.
Those were virtual though.
I don't know. Right. Those were virtual. Right. Dr. Director Dawson. So I just want to really encourage folks to think about and consider joining a committee. I know we are a big board. We're a pretty big board, and the committees are really a structure where we can kind of dissect some of these issues. One of the things that I've noted over the last couple of months that have been coming out has been the conversations about procurement risk management in different ways. And then we kind of had that conversation today around the budget. So, the technical committee is really the space where those ideas, we can really dissect those and explore those concepts a bit more. I've been so grateful to our staff who've been really helping put those agendas together. And I would just really encourage board members to join that. You'll have another opportunity at the next board meeting to join those committees. And then I did hear Director Perez say something about Cal CCA Lobby Day, which has passed, but I would encourage board members to attend the Cal CCA conference, which is on April 28th through the 30th. Now, it's not a lobby day, but because it's such a prime time in terms of the California state budget and policy, while it's in Irvine, it's a great opportunity to connect with some of our peers from other boards and really talk about some of these issues. So I just wanted to encourage folks. I believe MCE actually is fully funding lodging and travel there. Maybe I'm
If your city is unable to. So
Thank you. I know I appreciate that. I know, Dawn. I don't think you're Oprah, Dawn. Very similar to her, but I don't know if Oprah's given out trips to Irvine today. But I do just want to encourage board members to attend that. It's a great opportunity to again dig deeper into some of these issues. We're not the only ones dealing with them. But again, the timeliness of the conference, it being April, really helps also with the legislative strategy as well. So just wanted to say that. Thank you, Chair.
Marin County, the Marin office, do you have any comments on board and staff matters?
Director Salter?
I just wanted to make a comment to everyone. I know this was such a long meeting, and I wanted to say, first of all, thank you to staff for putting together a really large package for the budget. I know how much work that is and what it took, and taking all of the input from everybody. It's really appreciated. And even the back and forth during the week with all of us answering the Q&A, I know it was a tremendous amount of work. The second thing is those of us that maybe voted no on the budget is not a reflection on the staff, the hard work you do. It's just maybe some of us looking at the risks looking forward and some of our concerns about growing in an environment like this. But in no way, I don't want anyone to think we don't appreciate everybody here and that we're all here at 10:30 at night because we care about the organization. We're trying to make it better in our own way. But please don't take anything that the questions that we had. We're trying to do our job the best we can. And we very much appreciate everybody who's here, who stayed late, who cares about this organization and trying to move it forward in the best way possible. So I just wanted that for the record and to say thank you to everyone for staying so late.
Hey, thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay, we will now adjourn the meeting at 10:14 p.m. Thank you and have a good evening. Appreciate it.